Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes aggressive towards villagers part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. One tiny little change. It is often said, for the want of a nail, the battle could be lost. While overly simplistic, this particular nugget of truth was surprisingly accurate. For example, Chidori, Rasengan. We have all seen this battle once or 1,000 times. Naruto, hopped up on demonic chakra, faces an evil Sasuke with wings. Naruto, not wanting to actually hurt the first one he saw as a brother, aims high, while the crazy Sharingan user aims low, seeking a death blow. This perfect moment of understanding between two orphans brings a tear to your eye, doesn't it? Now, watch what happens if Naruto's aim slips just a little bit. Arg. The pain was incredible. Demonic chakra was tearing him apart, ripping his muscles and organs into shreds. But if he held back, even for an instant, Sasuke's strike would kill him. He couldn't die. He wouldn't die just yet. Suddenly, Naruto's focus, which had been concentrated on the first perfect Rasengan he had ever formed fighting Sasuke's black Chidori, seemed to expand, causing him to notice the hand-like wings that Sasuke's curse mark had generated. Wings that, if hit just so, would... Sasuke! Naruto cried out, aiming high, not for the forehead protector which would have disproved Sasuke's taunts earlier, but for that monstrous left wing. The Rasengan, infused with demonic chakra and Naruto's willpower, shredded the offending appendage, sending the Uchiha rocketing downward with the force of a meteor. The Chidori, aimed for his center mass, instead nearly took out half the muscles in Naruto's right arm. Crying out in pain, both genin fell, their destinies now left in the hands of fate. And a lazy jonin who happened to be on time for once, if only barely. Seeing his two students, Kakashi nearly wept with joy. They were both still alive. These two were among the first people he had started to care for in years. He couldn't lose them now. Looking over their respective injuries, however, the dog summoner winced. The impact had badly dazed the Uchiha, who had a nasty burn festering on his back. To Kakashi's sorrow, the containment seal for the cursed mark was also badly damaged. But Naruto, if it wasn't for his demonic healing, and Lady Tsunade, this sort of wound could end a ninja's career. Half of the muscles in his bicep were clearly seared off, and the blood was beginning to pool badly. Shaking his head in remorse, Kakashi formed a shadow clone and grabbed his two wayward students, starting back for Konoha. Phasing out of the ground, Zetsu smirked collectively. Isn't that interesting? Kakashi, running as quickly as possible through the trees, was coming upon an uncomfortable conclusion. Naruto might not survive the trip back. Clearly, the battle had drained all of his chakra, but the lack of demonic healing was even more worrisome. The one-eyed ninja had even begun to believe that the kid might become immortal at his current rate of growth. Unfortunately, the lowered blood pressure and body temperature seemed to counteract such claims. How could he look at himself in the mirror as a sensei if his personal technique ended the poor boy's life? Luckily for the brooding man, help had arrived. Jonin Kakashi. What is the status of Genin Uzumaki, Naruto, and Uchiha Sasuke? Sighing in contentment, Tsunade headed out to inform the interested parties about Choji's survival. That Nara medicine book had been a godsend, saving her precious time and effort in restabilizing the poor boy's metabolism and biosystem. Hopefully, with a few weeks of recovery and 3 days of solid bed rest, he'd be fit as a fiddle for active duty. Seeing the nervous Chunin chatting with the Suna Wind Mistress, a small smirk came to her lips. Young flirting. Coming to attention, Shikamaru started to speak, only to be cut off by the Hokage. Don't worry, Shikamaru, Choji will be fine. Kiba and Akamaru are in recovery, and I am waiting to hear from Shizune about Niji. Lady Tsunade. Looking over at her brunette apprentice, the Hokage quirked an eyebrow. Yes, Shizune? Smiling, the exhausted medic ninja gave a weary thumb up. Hyuga Niji is out of surgery. According to our examinations, the cellular graft is holding and he should make a full recovery. Smiling at the additional good news, the blondie was about to ask for more information when one of the field medics that she had dispatched after the Suna ninja ran over, frantic. Hokage-sama, we need you now. A level 3 critical wound, with nearly 1.5 hours of duration, is in need of treatment. Eyes widening, Tsunade ran after the man, followed by a weary Shizune, who managed to survive a wound that bad for over an hour. Not even pausing, the man replied, Genin Uzumaki, Naruto in the process of successfully apprehending Genin Uchiha Sasuke. The man was lucky to dodge out of the way as the two medics suddenly tripled in speed. Seeing the boy in Kakashi's arms, blood seeping out of a makeshift bandage and pooling beneath the man, Tsunade snapped out orders like a machine gun. Get him into OR2. I want Team Theta and Team Quattros available for cellular regeneration surgery, stat. Shizune, you have just completed a level 2 regeneration surgery and are unfit for another so soon. Look after the Uchiha, patch him up if you can, and get that bastard Jiraiya down here. I am going to want this punk's chakra sealed within the next 2 hours. Move it! Running to complete their duties, no one bothered to see the sorrow in Kakashi's lone eye. Obito, I have truly failed you. Now one would think that this would be the beginning of a happy ending, not if the Council of Advisors had anything to say about it. Hamura, Koharu and Danzo had been a part of the Konoha infrastructure for a long time, and as such, controlled numerous aspects of the military and civilian cultures within the village. And with the third Hokage gone, the one man who knew their methods and minds unlike anyone else, they had been able to gather an unprecedented amount of control, not that the fifth had realized that just yet. Sighing, Hamura palmed his face in frustration. This development could be cataclysmic for our village. Nodding her head in agreement, Koharu patted her old friend on the back. We were hoping that the Uchiha clan would be removed completely, besides Itachi, and restarted as loyal to the village. Instead, that fool allowed his brother to escape, making the brat the symbol of the Uchiha image within Konoha. This defection will permanently tarnish the clan, and might bring Itachi's wrath upon our heads. Danzo smirked, tapping his cane thoughtfully. But the truth is, the container managed to defeat the Uchiha, showing that his potential as a weapon is there for the taking. If properly trained, he could be our ace against Itachi's vengeance. Snorting, Koharu shook her head. That weakling beat Itachi? There is no way that such a loser of a ninja could possibly defeat the strongest Uchiha in decades, probably since Madara. Looking over his mission reports and general performance, the QB chakra is the only thing pushing him forward. Something that the strongest of the Uchiha can counter, which we must assume Itachi qualifies as. Hamura looked uncertain. I am not so sure. There are indicators that his education was hindered by elements in the academy. Perhaps with proper tutoring. Glaring at her old comrade, Koharu rebutted easily. That would take time that we do not have. No matter what he has suffered, Uzumaki Naruto became a necessary scapegoat and sacrificed to appease the masses of Konoha. Making him a scapegoat here might buy us some time. This time Danzo snorted, it won't be that easy. Inuzuka, Nara, Yamanaka, Akimichi, Hyuga, all of these clans are beginning to show interest in the boy. Not to mention the last two loyal Sannin. If we simply try to make him the scapegoat of the Uchiha's injuries or some rubbish like that, the clan heirs might bring him needed political, if not popular, support. That sort of division is not something that Konoha needs, especially after the attack from Orochimaru. Koharu sighed, spreading her hands in defeat. Then what would you suggest? About to continue the debate, Danzo was interrupted by the appearance of a loyal supporter. What is it, Sai? Face covered with a blank mask, the young root member held forward a scroll to his master. The missive from the capital, Danzo-sama. Taking the scroll and dismissing the boy, Danzo reviewed its contents, then smirked. Looking at his compatriots, Danzo asked a question that would change the face of Konoha forever. That last report from Jiraiya said something about Akatsuki, did it not? She waited in front of the exam room, eyes red from crying. Haruno Sakura was having a major internal struggle. On one hand, she had loved Sasuke for years, giving up friendship, self-respect, and, in some cases, human decency to express this. Luckily, she had started calming down in recent months, from training with her crush and fighting difficult odds as a real shinobi. However, her love had disabled her and fled, betraying her and the village. Sasuke had been her focus for so long that Sakura had also offered to betray everything that she had worked for and treasured just to go along with him. On the other hand, she had Naruto. And no one had really liked the kid growing up. Parents had told their children, or any child really, to avoid him since they were young. His constant fighting for her affection had stretched Sakura's last nerve, and made her loathe his existence. And yet, Naruto, for all his loud boasts and annoyance, always seemed to protect his friends, fighting for them with everything that he had. Finding out that he had defeated Gaara, instead of Sasuke, really shouldn't have surprised her as much as it did. Naruto loved her, while Sasuke did not, but he was willing to fight with everything he had to ensure the Uchiha's return. And it had nearly gotten him killed. Sakura had been lucky enough to see Naruto and Sasuke being brought into the hospital as she waited for information on the mission. She had seen the damage to Sasuke's back and had nearly screamed until she saw Naruto. Cut, bleeding Naruto who wanted to be Hokage with all of his heart, missing a chunk of his right arm. It hurt to know that without his feelings for her, Naruto might not have fought as hard or as long. He might not have defeated Sasuke at such a horrible price. So Sakura sat and wept, waiting for word on her teammates, wondering what she could say to Naruto to make his sacrifice worth some puppy love for a pathetic fangirl. Sakura? Looking up, she tried to stop her tears, but couldn't quite manage it. Giving up, Sakura smiled ironically. Hey Ino. Are you sure of this? Danzo smirked at Hamura, reveling in the feeling of power. Positive. When Jiraiya and the container returned with Tsunade and Shizune, only an idiot would have missed their feelings for the brat. I just took the precaution of planning ahead for this sort of eventuality. The daimyo was kind enough to understand the situation, and will support our removal of a ninja from the ranks over Tsunade's protests for the good of Konoha as a whole. Once removed from the protection of the military, we can have him killed without major consequence to the village. Seeing this, Tsunade will be left with no other recourse but to banish him. Nodding her head in agreement, Koharu smiled lightly. Banishment can be released later, if we decide that his power is needed. However, one child wandering the countryside will make a much better target than Konoha proper. We know that the Akatsuki won't need the Kyuubi for another 3 years. But if Uzumaki leaves the village, that will force them to waste time and resources to find him. Resources that they, and more importantly Itachi, cannot use against us. Hamura sighed, although he also shared a small grin. It is too bad about the fact that even if he was accepted back, Uzumaki would remain simply a genin of Konoha. Advancement in 3 years without any major training would be nearly impossible, and would put him in our power for a long time. It's not like the little fool could maintain a proper training program alone and on the run. Shaking her head in amusement, Koharu sighed, as if the little idiot was ever actually going to become Hokage. Ha, what a simpleton! Shrugging, Danzo visibly savored the feelings of control. We'll just wait until Tsunade finishes her surgery. By then, her exhaustion and lack of information will ensure the maximum possibility of success. After all, what could she do with no warning, and no immediate major political allies? Even the clans will hesitate to reject the will of the daimyo, and never for one little boy. Hyuga Hinata ran, concern filling her every step and worry her every thought. 3 of the people closest to her had been hurt. Kiba, Niji, and Naruto had all gone on a major retrieval mission, but the reports that father had received worried her greatly. The opposing forces, rumored to have been instrumental in the third Hokage's death, were protecting the Uchiha from any attempt at recovery. These were her friends out there, facing ninja of much greater rank and experience. Hinata had to find out if they were okay. Although the crying Sakura, being comforted by Ino, was not filling her with confidence. Sighing, Tsunade savored her sake while letting her bones settle and relax after a harrowing afternoon. That kid continued to surprise her. The cellular regeneration surgery had been difficult. While in a more vital location, Niji's injury was significantly smaller and cleaner. Naruto's arm was comprised of fused flesh, burned away with lightning and bleeding from several major arteries. An extremely delicate operation, and almost impossible to complete. Luckily, Naruto embodied impossible. Once he recovered his power, Naruto's own naturally rapid regeneration should make up the difference. Apparently, healing one Chidori to the chest had maxed out most of his reserves. It was the secondary, follow-up scan that concerned her. In several places, especially around the skull and neck, blockages appeared to have formed in a uniform pattern. When examined with a surface scan, nothing came up, but a more intrusive deep tissue scan, common in post-operation situations, had better results. It seemed that the stomach was not the only place that Naruto had seals in place. Someone or someone's had, over the course of years it appeared, placed several seals to block the kid's development. Jiraiya was still going over the construction of the matrix, but several different styles and patterns were in place. Some could easily be broken, others would break down naturally, more would require real effort, but in the end all would be removed. Cataloging them was taking time, but the signatures seemed stable enough to trace, especially the faint Hyuga-style emblem in the left bicep dot or the one that seemed to have Sarutobi-sensei's signature in the right leg. Staring into the depths of her cup, the Hokage had to wonder, how many people heard you boasting Naruto, and feared instead of laughed? Hokage-sama? Looking up at the Chunin that was replacing Shizune for the afternoon, until her recovery was complete, Tsunade narrowed her eyes in irritation. Yes, what is it? Bowing quickly to break eye contact, the young man shifted nervously. The honorable counselors are here to see you. Sighing, Tsunade wondered again what she was high on when accepting this job. He was quiet. Sakura, Hinata, and Ino shared that thought in eerie sync. Naruto was recovering in the hospital bed, bandages wrapped around each limb and torso. His breathing was shallow, his heartbeat was slow, and his eyes were twitching rapidly. The sneaky blonde had been silent, and still longer than at any other time within their collective memories, something that scared the group more than they cared to admit. Sasuke wasn't worth this. Looking at Sakura in surprise, Ino tried to keep her voice down. It seemed wrong to shout right now. Sakura? What are you talking about? Shaking her head, the pinkette fought off her tears once more. Sasuke betrayed everyone: Konoha, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto, me. He wasn't worth Naruto getting hurt so badly. Holding her head between her hands in frustration, Sakura suddenly felt drained. Even if I don't love him, Naruto deserves better than this, and if his promise to me resulted in any part of these injuries, how can I forgive myself for asking for his strength? Looking at the girl in front of her, Hinata knew she should be furious. The little, spoiled brat had begged Naruto to bring back Sasuke back, and could be considered responsible for a lot of his pain. She had hit him, yelled at him, and used him, but Hinata pulled her into a hug. If she cried for Naruto, Sakura couldn't be all that bad. What is the meaning of this? Glaring down at the two old farts in front of her, Tsunade had to focus her temper carefully. One false move and the honorable counselors would become blood stains on the floor. We are giving you an option, Tsunade. Either banish Uzumaki Naruto, or we will have him eliminated. Eye twitching, Tsunade reminded herself to have the standards of mental health evaluations revised shortly. Clearly, these two had gone senile. On what charge? And I swear if you say injuring that little traitor. Shaking her head at the impertinence, Koharu decided to cut to the chase. Actually, this is for the good of Konoha. Taking up where his partner had left off, Hamura stared down the angry Sannin calmly. With the successful retrieval of Uchiha Sasuke, we will continue to have resources tied up in countering Orochimaru's efforts to capture the boy. Although killing him would make our lives easier, Sasuke represents too much genetic potential to simply eliminate. Even stripped of his shinobi status, the Sharingan must remain in Konoha. Taking up the slack, Koharu braved Tsunade's climbing temper. However, with the advent of Akatsuki, a second force that makes Orochimaru seem minor has come forth. They have already successfully infiltrated the village once, and we lack the resources to protect both elements. Clearly, we must take the path of least resistance. Rubbing her head in irritation, Tsunade promised to make that revision soon. And sending Naruto into the jaws of Akatsuki, fulfilling their objectives, is better for Konoha. How exactly? Shrugging, Koharu answered with ease. By dividing our enemies instead of unifying them. Orochimaru will obsess over the Uchiha, concentrating his attention here where we can deflect his efforts. However, Akatsuki will not need the Kyuubi for nearly 3 years. Years that they will waste resources searching for one boy in the elemental countries. Orochimaru shouldn't waste effort on Uzumaki due to fear of Akatsuki reprisal, so Naruto can wander freely, drawing their gaze from our walls. Hamura broke in, hoping to leave in one piece. Now we can release the banishment later, but with Uzumaki out of the village, we have time and energy to rebuild and regroup. It really is for the best. Smash. Although stoic, it took their many years of training not to flinch at the atomized remnants of the Hokage's desk. So that's it? We just throw him away and destroy his career because it is convenient? Is that how Konoha ninja treat their comrades? Rolling her eyes at the dramatics, Koharu sighed, except that Uzumaki is not just a ninja. He is a Jinchuriki, and as such, he is Konoha's sacrifice. Maybe we can spare some minor assets to reimburse him later, but Konoha is worth more than the efforts and issues of one little boy. Seeing that the blonde was about ready to shatter them instead of the furniture, Hamura decided to wrap things up. We have the support of the daimyo. It is either banishment, or Naruto is cast out from the ninja program and dealt with permanently. We will give you 2 days to consider. Of course, we are not without some mercy. Nothing can be done until the boy is somewhat healthier. Good day. Leaving, both of the counselors smiled inside. This power was somewhat liberating. After all, the counselors ordering the Hokage was new and exciting territory. Something to consider for the future. Tsunade stared out upon Konoha, ignoring the remains of her desk, and the Chunin secretary's attempts at bringing in more paperwork. What had happened to this place? The advisors' council had opposed Sarutobi-sensei for years in regards to Naruto. His notes and journals were very detailed in that respect, yet she has the freaking hat for less than a month, and those two old farts managed to dictate terms to her. Since when has Konoha become a democracy? She was a military dictator, and was supposed to order her people and ninja forces. Not the other way around. She didn't know how the council had managed to gain the daimyo's favor so quickly, but this move had been carefully made. Countering it directly could bring the village to its knees. Pausing for a moment, Tsunade thought over that statement again, this time more closely. Bring the village to its knees. She should care. Why again? Naruto was the one who had brought her back against all odds. He had protected these ungrateful fools for over a decade, only to be abused and disregarded as trash. Heck, he defeated the Golden Uchiha after being the dead last of his graduating class, despite massive resistance. Even if his dreams seemed ludicrous and unreal, the kid clearly had the potential to follow in his father's footsteps, although Kushina would be proud at the disregard for personal safety he seemed to embody. The village had put block after block in his path to the tower, and he was slowly but surely knocking them down. Listening around town, it was clear that his reputation was growing, moving from fear and anger to respect and awe. The successful completion of this latest mission would only add to that impressive resume. This latest barrier, though, this was going too far. Besides, if she let those old fossils get away with such moves now, they would turn her into a figurehead leader within a year. A statement had to be made, showing just why you didn't screw with the Hokage. Now what would be dramatic enough? She might need help for this one. You. Looking around the fifth stack of paperwork that he had been balancing on the floor, the Chunin sweated at the look in his leader's eye. Yes, Hokage-sama? Nodding in resolution, Tsunade gestured to the door in irritation. Drop that, and get Jiraiya and Shizune to come here at once. I don't care what you have to do, but both of those ninja must be here within the hour. Yes, Hokage-sama. Rubbing his eyes in irritation, Jiraiya felt a major headache coming on. Why did he always hang around troublesome blondes? The sealing matrix on Naruto was only partially translated, but he could guess the gist of the rest of it. Already, he had a mind to smash some of the village to bits with bunta. The bulk of the seals near the head were suppression seals, clearly made to prevent chakra from reaching the brain. At least 3 of them were from a Yamanaka, and another 2 looked like advanced A and BU-style designs for prisoners. Overtly, they could be argued as buffers to prevent the QB chakra from reaching the brain and possessing the boy. Of course, since the QB chakra was normally purified before reaching the mind by the existing seal and the matrices were not calibrated to one another, most of the kid's mental development was consequently stunted. And no wonder he only seemed to have natural brilliance when fighting at full power. That was the only time his mind was receiving enough energy to function near normal capacity. Of course, the fact that they had been in place for at least 6 to 8 years each, and showed signs of slow degradation, was not helping at all. 2 more of the seals looked like Uchiha Genjutsu suppressors. They could be seared with a simple touch, and often prevented any aptitude in Genjutsu from being utilized by prisoners. Normally, this was accomplished by screwing with natural chakra control and mental image recognition and retrieval. Someone was obviously worried about the QB granting enhanced illusion abilities, just like the legends spoke of. These were old, but powerful, and might take at least an hour to fix each. 4 seals on the torso seemed fairly amateurish, probably Chunin level, and were a variation of the seals used on chakra weights. They absorbed Naruto's natural chakra, and made movement seem limited, as if he was weighted down. However, the worst part of these seals seemed to be the lack of QB chakra infusing them. That seriously weakened the force protection against the QB and Naruto's defense against the fox. This was very bad news indeed. Most of the other seals were minor, designed to hinder coordination and movement in some way. Individually, they weren't more than nasty pranks really. But together, they could be hazardous to a person's health. If it wasn't for some really impressive muscle memory, he would be shocked that the kid could walk, let alone run and fight in any significant fashion. But the last 2, those were each a piece of work. The Hyuga construct initially seemed like a minor avoidance seal. If Naruto was too close to a Hyuga of the main house, it would probably generate some odd feelings or sensations. Obviously, the old men of the family council didn't want Naruto getting too close to any of the Hyuga maidens, or dealing with the clan in general. Not horribly evil on the face of it. If not for the fact that prolonged exposure to a main house Hyuga could result in pain or death with the right-hand seal. It was like a valve, energy would build behind it the closer Naruto and the Hyuga remain near one another. They stop hanging out and the energy bleeds within minutes. But if they stay too close, one motion and the energy bursts the valve, killing him instantly. He was just lucky that the caged bird seal would ground out around something like that, or Niji could have ended Naruto in the Chunin exam. The last one though, that was nearly unforgivable for a ninja to carry. The third had placed a seal brand on the kid's leg, probably since he was 3 years old. It was a locator used sometimes on high-risk prisoners, to make tracking their movements easier. With the right knowledge and tools, these ninja could be tracked and observed at any time. No ninja with such a brand should be allowed on the front lines. The possibility of abuse, or worse, an enemy tracking the signal was too high. It was sheer luck the kid's natural reserves blanked most of the traces at this point. That would be the first to go, if he had anything to say about it. Jiraiya sighed as he headed towards the tower. Tsunade's summons was a nice break from the moral question this whole fiasco inspired. If he had stayed in Konoha to look after Naruto as his godfather, could he have prevented this abuse? Or would he have followed orders to place his own work in that mess? Shizune smiled at the tower in front of her. Long and productive days always put her in a better mood. For too many years, she had been forced to run, protecting the reputation and budget of her mistress as much as possible. Learning what medicine she could between drunken binges and gambling parties. All in all, being proactive and effective in her efforts was a nice change of pace. Plus Konoha was home, the place where her parents and uncle had lived and died for. What more could she ask for than protecting that special place? Although taking out some frustration on the bloody little Uchiha had made her day. A patch-up order was simple: keep the subject alive, no more, no less. His back was going to be one massive scar, and a few ribs might have healed a little weak, but the kid would live. It was a shame about the strained hand ligaments damaging his potential to ever shape jutsu again though. Not that such action would be possible after the chakra suppressor seals Jiraiya had placed all over his body. Honestly, Sasuke would be lucky to ever see DYLIGHT after this was all settled. Normally, a traitor might have gotten a prison stay with potential re-enlistment in the civilian ranks if there were mitigating circumstances. For the last loyal member of a bloodline to seek out an S-class ninja who was a sworn enemy of the village, he was lucky to be breathing and a sperm donor. Smirking as she entered, Shizune wondered what sake she should pick up to celebrate this mission. No one screwed with her little brother figure. Blinking, Jiraiya twisted a finger in his left ear. Care to repeat that? I could have sworn I had something crazy in my ear. Smiling slightly, Tsunade gestured to the two seats in front of the ruined desk. That was mostly my reaction. Those old idiots are using him as bait to delay the Akatsuki, doing a piss-poor job of it to boot. They're worried about something and I'm not sure what. Sitting down, Shizune barely registered losing control of her legs in shock. But that's ridiculous. We don't simply throw our ninja away like that. They don't have that kind of authority. Biting her lip, she looked in her master's eyes, terrified. Do they? Shaking her head, Tsunade drank deeply from her sake bottle. On the face of it, no, they do not. I'm the Hokage, and Naruto is a ninja under my command. All in all, it's fairly straightforward. However, those jerks aren't dumb enough to bluff the authority of the daimyo. Somehow, they are going to use that authority to override my control of the village. We cannot allow this. Snorting, Jiraiya rubbed his chin. Actually, I had an idea that might come in handy. Noting their focus was gained, the Toad Sage smirked. Before this whole fiasco started, I was planning on making the kid my apprentice. That could accomplish the same things that they claim Banishment would. He'd be gone from the village, the Akatsuki would still be tracking him and avoiding Konoha, but he would be protected under my wing and retain his ninja status. What do you think? Turning to the window, Tsunade's next question derailed his good mood. Have you finished mapping the secondary seals, their functions, and who placed them? Deflating slightly, Jiraiya shifted in irritation. Yeah, there were at least 5 or 6 authors there. Primary purpose of each one was to limit him in some way. Suppressed intelligence, focus, chakra control, genjutsu ability, you name it, if it makes you a better ninja, they suppressed it. I've identified the Yamanaka, at least 2, Captain level A and BU, 1 Chunin, the Hyuga, and Old Man Sarutobi. Gasping, Shizune looked at Jiraiya in shock. The third Hokage sealed Naruto. Not a suppressor seal, that would be bad enough. No, he used a tracking seal on a ninja in service. Not one of the smartest moves he ever made, that's for damn sure. Leaning back in her chair, Tsunade still refused to turn around. In your professional opinion, what would happen if these seals were released properly at this time? Looking out the window, Jiraiya felt slightly hollow. Well, he'd have a bunch more power. The Chunin badly limited his movement, the Yamanaka and ANBU limited his mind, and the Uchiha practically removed his genjutsu ability. Take off those limiters, and his physical and mental reserves, outside of the fox, would increase dramatically. However, he'd pretty much have to learn everything from scratch. All of his muscle memory was screwed up badly, and his control would be shot again. Frankly, even with the shadow clone jutsu, we're talking years of effort to rebuild everything here. Gradual removal wouldn't help much either, because he'd be stuck at the beginning with every lost seal. Honestly, in my opinion, the whole matrix is a major foobar. Turning around, both Shizune and Jiraiya were shocked by the sad smile the blonde possessed. If it was anyone else, I would recommend they be removed from service. But if there is one thing that Naruto has shown, it's an ability to adapt. Blinking, Shizune looked over at Jiraiya. Wait, what did the Hyuga do? Hearing the description of that horrible seal, a plot began to form in Tsunade's mind. Well, I have to say, Jiraiya, your plan has serious merit. It accomplishes everything that is necessary, and might even be approved by those idiots. However, smacking her palm and fist together, Tsunade grinned. I don't think the message is strong enough. If Hamura and Koharu want to run out the reason I returned to this village, I think that they need to realize the consequences of their actions. Compromising this way puts them in a position of power, one that they really just don't have. Shizune suddenly felt a new chill. This wasn't the first time such a reaction had occurred. They usually preceded a loss at the gambling parlor. I want a list of the people who had the authority and the position to accomplish those seals. I then want them in front of torture and interrogation within the next few hours. Well, anyone still alive at least. Ibiki is preferred, but I'll take Anko in a pinch. Then, I want you to evaluate Naruto's physical recovery and remove said seals as defined by such. In the meantime, there is much to be done, Shizune. Jumping to her feet, the brunette hugged Taunton in fear. Yes, Tsunade-sama? I think it's time for another trip. But first, let's do some shopping. Groaning, Naruto tried to grab his head in pain only to bite back a curse. What the hell was wrong with his arm? Oh yeah, Sasuke. Naruto? Forcing his eyes open, the normally hyperactive blonde looked into the worried green eyes of his teammate. Sakura? Tearing up for the 100th time that day, the pinky tea grabbed his left hand and sobbed. Naruto, why did you have to get so hurt? Wincing at the pressure, he tried to force a grin. Any Sakura-chan, I promised, didn't I? I brought him back, and that was a promise of a lifetime. Smiling despite herself, Sakura nodded sharply. Looking around, Naruto was surprised by the others in the room. Ino? Hinata-chan? What are you two doing here? Laughing uncomfortably, Ino scratched the back of her head. Well, I heard that Choji and Shikamaru were here after the mission, and… Eyes widening, Naruto tried without success to get up. Choji? Shikamaru? What happened to everyone? Ano-kun. Everyone's fine. Looking over at Hinata, he pierced her with a sharp stare. Are you sure, Hinata-chan? Feeling lightheaded from the attention, the Hyuga heiress nodded rapidly. Niji and Kiba were hurt, but they are recovering with no problems. Choji was in bad shape, but recovered thanks to Tsunade-sama. Taking over, Ino flashed a bright smile. Shikamaru's just tired with a broken finger. Apparently it was too troublesome to die out there. Also, Lee is recovering nicely after not only his operation, but some sort of engagement out there. Oh. And you're never going to believe what happened. The Suna Genin came and helped with the mission. Eyes widening, Naruto gaped at his fellow blonde. Wait, Gaara's here? Shivering slightly, Sakura nodded. Apparently, Tsunade-sama was worried about the mission and requested the backup from Suna. They volunteered to help for some reason. Shocking the group, Naruto smiled widely. Mama. I'm glad they came. They really aren't that bad once you get through to them. Shaking her head in exasperation, Sakura quirked an eyebrow. Naruto, what happened out there? Not something that you need to worry about, Haruno. Looking around, the room was shocked at the appearance of Jiraiya, larger than life and twice as imposing. Hey, Ero-sennin. What are you doing here? Glaring at the unwanted title, Jiraiya sighed, smirking slightly. Tsunade sent me. There are some things that she wants me to check over. You'll have to talk with your girlfriends later. Seeing his loss of composure, Sakura couldn't help but laugh at Naruto's expression. God, she had needed that. Don't worry, Naruto. We'll see you after checking in with the others. Leading the blushing Hinata and irritable Ino out of the room, Sakura left to check in on Lee. If Naruto could still be that silly, maybe things would work out in the end. Tsunade-sama? Browsing through the Jutsu Scrolls section in the Hokage vault, the blonde quirked an eyebrow, unknowingly mimicking Sakura's earlier action. Yes, Shizune? Shuffling under the piles of documents that her mistress seemed to be grabbing at random, the brunette winced. About Naruto's injuries. Picking up a black file, only to add it to the growing pile without looking, Tsunade nodded absently. What about them? How do you think that the seals were imprinted so deeply? That caused all movement to cease. Increasingly nervous, Shizune started to babble, a habit she thought broken at 12, after fighting off 20 mercenaries hired to retrieve a drunken and drugged slug Sannin. I mean, for them to be below the level that a surface skin would notice, they'd have to be practically imprinted on his organs. Shizune. Seeing her superior's cold eyes, she squeaked. I have my suspicions about how those particular injuries were acquired. If I am right though, I will probably end up killing someone. So let's wait until T&I is finished, okay? Gulping, Shizune could practically feel the temperature drop. Hi! Tsunade-sama. Smirking, she turned to the video depository. Now then, we have a few more files to review, but let's have a gander over here. I want to have a look at some special entertainment. Pausing on her way to the video-filled shelves, Tsunade almost seemed to pick up a black cylinder as an afterthought. Forming a couple of shadow clones to carry their research, Tsunade and Shizune began to head back to the office. Excuse me, Hokage-sama? Looking over at the bird-faced ANBU in front of the door, she impatiently cracked her neck. I'm in a bit of a hurry, Hawk. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama. But you still need to record your document retrieval before leaving. Security measures from the third. Sighing, Tsunade signed the log, adding a notation for one guest, and signed it with a bloody thumbprint. Looking over the order, you could feel Hawk's frown. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, but you didn't give a listing for Urk. That, by the way, is the sound of a male being choked with one hand. Looking at him through the eyes of the mask, Tsunade glared. I'm the Hokage, I'm in a rush, these documents are sensitive, and thus their exact existence mustn't be confirmed. Yet you want me to form a paper trail with them? Perhaps that mask has started to cut circulation to your brain. Gulping, the ANBU proved his brilliance with the simple act of getting out of their way. Sauntering off, Tsunade gave him a smirk. Good boy. Hinata smiled happily, practically skipping on her trip home. Everyone was okay. Naruto-kun had talked to her. Someone had said they might be dating. Surely that meant she could talk with him, without fainting? Entering her family's estate, the heiress was shocked by the running branch members, gathering around the hallways. Everyone looked solemn and frightened, whispering harshly to one another. Hyuga tended not to gossip lightly. Something bad must have happened. Spotting a member of her old protection detail, Hinata headed over to find out what had happened. Ano, Kaori-san? What's going on? Looking down, a tall woman, with blue-black hair held up with a high, noticed her old charge. For once, the child's nervousness did not irritate her. The emotion was all over the house at the moment. Hinata-sama, where have you been? You were expected back nearly an hour ago. Blushing at the chiding tone, Hinata visibly stopped herself from tapping her fingers. That particular habit always irritated Kaori badly, for some reason. Ano Niji's team was only cleared for visitors about 2 hours ago. Checking in with everyone took more time than I thought. There wasn't an event or dinner tonight, was there? Smiling lightly at her attitude, Kaori was thankful about the improved relations between the cousins. When Hinata was sent to the branch house, it would simplify things greatly to have a family member near her own age to explain the situation and lifestyle she would adapt. No, Hinata-sama, nothing like that. It's just that, about 20 minutes ago, 5 ANBU arrived demanding the presence of Shinji-sama. They gave no reason or explanation, but the action has sent the Council of Elders into a rage. Paling, Hinata thanked Kaori and hurried. Hyuga don't run in their own house, to her room, bolting the door. Hyuga's Shinji was 87, one of the most bigoted members of the main house, her personal tormentor since the age of 4, and one other important thing. Shinji was the primary seal master of the Hyuga clan. His hand had branded Hyuga in the caged bird seal for nearly 5 decades. Not one of his seals had ever been found to be flawed or imperfect, even by Hyuga standards. His very life was considered a treasure of the whole clan. If he had managed to cause trouble for the village significant enough to be imprisoned or even killed, it would take years for another seal master of his quality to be trained. Years that no one would be forced to bear that accursed seal. Hinata prepared to sleep, wondering if the kami would mind if she wished for his misfortune, if only just a little bit. The moon had long since risen in the sky before the quiet of the village was shattered by raucous laughter. Wahahaha. I can't believe that little brat won the battle with a fart. Oh, that's too rich. Chuckling along with Tsunade, Shizune prepared to change the tape out for the next match, not noticing a blushing Hinata handing Naruto some special salve. Tsunade did though, and her thoughts continued to bubble. Everyone knew that the Chunin exams were a way of building relations between nations and showcasing strength. What most people didn't realize was the fact that all matches and interactions were carefully recorded and filed in the high-security vault. These recordings were vital to the continued security and development of the new generations of ninja, and an odd piece of data, once analyzed, could result in significant understanding of a village's strengths and weaknesses. Plus, they made a great diversion from depressing data. The files that Tsunade had seemingly picked up at random were mostly a front to acquire the black file. Compacted with special security and storage seals, it detailed operations that most of the continent was not even allowed to contemplate, let alone acknowledge. These were the dirtiest secrets documented by the Hokages and ANBU captains. The perfect place to find evidence of official sanction for the seals that Jiraiya had described. The good news was that no official sanction was recorded, meaning that the orders didn't come from Sarutobi. The bad news was that either the ANBU were acting independently to a significant degree, or someone had a major thumb in the program's pie. Neither was a particularly wonderful prospect. The secondary stuff in the file, well, at least she had an idea as to who scared the advisors' council so bloody bad. Plus the name of a third conspirator. This was going to get messy. Luckily, she had a plan forming, she just needed some more bodies. However, Jiraiya was still unraveling the secondary seal matrix, so the main project couldn't start for a little bit. That didn't mean that she wouldn't make certain arrangements on her own. Hokage-sama, Sarutobi Asuma, Yuhi Kurenai and Mato Gai are here as ordered. Sealing up the black file, Tsunade had Shizune to turn off the TV. The next few minutes were going to be awkward with a capital A. Motioning the three jonin in, she sighed deeply. This was going against her sensei's wishes, but she really didn't have a choice. Good evening, you three. Hopefully, this will not take too long, but I might be calling upon your services extensively in the near future. So for the moment, prepare for a long stretch of on-site village duty. Nodding, the jonin stayed calm and professional. Well, as calm as Guy got anyways. Although, they had to admit, the nature of her request was odd, especially considering the current state of the village. Now then, normally this would only require 2 jonin-level ninja of good standing. However, I wanted to make sure that there is no mistake in this, so everyone in this room will bear witness. Pulling out the black cylinder retrieved from the records vault, she ignored the shocked gazes of Asuma and Shizune. Guy and Kurenai looked clueless, however. Making eye contact with each participant, Tsunade carefully placed the cylinder on the desk. This is a security capsule. They are only used in very extreme situations, when containing documents that must never be lost. The security seals can only be undone by a Hokage and 2 high-level ninja. Normally, that would be assumed to be the advisors' council. However, they and I are having some issues at the moment, and cannot be trusted with something so delicate, especially a black capsule. Nodding in resignation, Asuma sighed out a line of smoke. Black capsules are exclusive to the security of advanced Hokage documents, especially concerning issues of personal lineage and private techniques, right? So, who set this one up? Taking out a pair of scalpels, Tsunade pinned him with a look until the cigarette was gone. The 4th Hokage did. I believe, based upon the security stamp and location, that this record capsule was set up on the night of the QB attack. While I have theories, I want confirmation before mentioning them. Now each of you must nick yourselves, and add some blood to the top symbol. I'll seal it with my stamp, and it should verify the authority. Begin. With practiced ease, each jonin added a few drops of blood to the cylinder. Acting before the small puddle could dry, Tsunade sealed it with her stamp, activating the authorization. The small cylinder opened, releasing the contents. Most were pictures, with some official documents clipped together. Most prominent, however, was the birth certificate on top of the pile, Uzumaki Naruto's birth certificate, including his parents, and an attached marriage certificate. Suddenly, the village pariah had become the legitimate son of the 4th Hokage. The air became rather heavy after that bit of news was confirmed. A knock on the door shattered the atmosphere rather quickly. Gathering the paperwork, the Hokage called out for the person to come in. A grim Ibiki and irritated Anko were not a sight anyone was looking forward to facing. Putting down a set of folders, Ibiki took a seat without waiting for an invitation. Well, Hokage-sama, you are not going to like this. Sighing in relief, Jiraiya sat back in his chair, wiping the condensation from his forehead. Phew, that makes 3 down, 8 to go. Looking at the prone form of his godson, he squared his shoulders. This was no time to take a break. Popping a soldier pill, Jiraiya began unraveling the second weight seal, picking apart the strands, one by one. Slowly, but surely, the small strokes of chakra-enhanced symbolism faded away, leaving a bloody but clear section of chest. All in all, this project was exhausting. Removing the tracking and Hyuga seals were relatively simple. Each was a foreign presence, designed to be rather unnoticeable and separate from his body. Sort of like a chocolate chip in some ice cream. It's a part of the dish, but easily scooped from the whole. But when you get into the seals attached to his potential, it was closer to removing the vanilla bean flavoring. These seals had been rooted in his chakra pathways for so long that untangling them felt along the lines of balancing an egg on a spoon, delicate, nerve-wracking, and beyond dangerous to the egg. Removing one of the bloody weight seals had already doubled the amount of power flowing through Naruto's chakra network. Another one made his wounds disappear to nothingness. Jiraiya might not be a medical ninja, but even he knew it was nuts. How the heck was Naruto walking with this much strength sealed up? Sighing, the Toad Sage cracked his knuckles and began to work again. The sooner he finished here, the sooner he could research at the hot springs. The headache that Tsunade had been nursing all morning had been going down with each proactive effort. The confirmation of Naruto's parentage was just icing on the cake. But the report from Tianai was making that headache look like a simple hangover. You are telling me that, as near as you can tell, these idiots didn't coordinate their efforts? Shaking his head, Ibiki had to wonder if Tsunade would be willing to yell at prisoners in her spare time. It certainly was enough to scare him. Not exactly, Hokage-sama. Most of the plans appear to have been formed after a meeting during the Kyubi festival 9 years ago. The principals were drunk, and complaining to one another about Uzumaki's ambitions of being Hokage. Of course, we have no Uchihas left to interview who might have known what happened, but those seem unrelated to the ANBU and Yamanaka efforts. Picking up a report, he skimmed the contents again to review the details. The principal figures from the Yamanaka were Kenshin and Jinzo. Kenshin was a Chunin at the time of the Kyubi attack, while Jinzo was Inoichi's pupil for about a year before joining Black Ops. Jinzo was killed in action against Sound, but Kenshin paints an interesting picture. A few months after the discussion, they were heading home from a bar when the sounds of a fight aroused their suspicions. Looking down an alley, Kenshin realized that a drunken civilian was beating up a child. Jinzo stopped his interference, saying it was the Kyubi brat, and that they should enjoy the show. They waited another 10 minutes until the principal attacker left the scene, and made contact with Uzumaki. Seeing this as an opportunity, Kenshin knocked him out, and put a memory inhibitor on the back of his skull. Not to be outdone, Jinzo put a reaction inhibitor over the first seal. Apparently, they had an argument over what to do next when, thinking about Inoichi's daughter entering the academy with the boy, they put a libido seal on top of that. At this point, an ANBU patrol was seen incoming, and the two of them left quickly. They were never implicated until today. Shaking her head, Anko sighed. Unfortunately, no viable candidates for the Chunin-style weight seals seemed to stick out. The only major possibility was Mizuki, and he was killed months ago. However, the style is not distinct enough yet to determine an author. So, without interviewing the kid, we're pretty much out of luck on those. Flipping through the next transcripts, Ibiki noticed Anko's deepening scowl. She had not appreciated the initiative of the former ANBU captains. The most likely culprit for the first ANBU-style seal was the previous boar. However, he also was killed in action against Sound. His record was fairly clean, until he was put on a guard detail for Uzumaki 5 years ago. It was noticed that boar was leading the kid into ambushes, so he was suspended for 6 months and reassigned to border duty. If there is any time span that the seal was placed, it would be then. The nature of the seal is something that Jiraiya is better qualified to explain. Tapping a file with a red flag, he calmly continued. However, Lion was fairly easy to find as the second culprit. He was forced to retire nearly 2 years ago due to stress, but the event occurred while he was in the mask. There are not a lot of seal masters of his caliber in the forces, and this had his fingerprints all over it. All we could get out of him was the seal was needed to stop the demon. On the surface, it looked like one of our restraining seals, meant to help break prisoners. However, the values are all off, making it twice as strong as is normally considered safe. He won't be talking again for a while. Rubbing her eyes in irritation, Tsunade really needed something stronger than sake right now. What did you find out from the Hyuga? This time, Anko stepped forward. Obviously, it was taking everything she had to stop from breaking things. Or people. Oh, the little shit was a real piece of work. Seems like he noticed that Hinata chick checking out Uzumaki while training, and got this twisted little idea. Starting to pace, Anko didn't quite notice how her voice was raised and her nostrils were flaring. No one really wanted to call her on it. He caught Uzumaki a few nights later, and knocked him out with a Juken strike. Then, he inscribed the seal and runs, leaving the kid in the street. His first idea is to make Uzumaki associate the Hyuga with negative emotions, but his backup idea is the sick part. You see, he figured that if Hinata liked the kid, she might get close to him, and if that happened, she'd be in the perfect position to kill him. The silence was deafening. Cracking her neck, Tsunade pinched her nose in irritation. How exactly was she supposed to accomplish this? Grinning hollowly, Anko met the Hokage's gaze, ignoring the worried looks from her fellow jonin. She'd get close, start seducing him, and then, when no one was looking, use the right-hand sign to induce a heart attack. Shinji-kun thought that threatening her with the caged bird seal early would be enough to gain her cooperation. Luckily, they never got close enough for him to initiate the plan. Closing her eyes, Tsunade calmly said, "No, you don't get to kill him, Anko." Noting the sudden pout, Tsunade let out a small grin. "We're going to do something much worse." Seeing that the reports were accepted, both Ibiki and Anko prepared to leave, only to be stopped by one final question. "I noticed that no one mentioned any sealing brushes and ink. Was there any particular reason for that?" Pausing briefly, Ibiki answered hoarsely, "Brushes and ink were not mentioned because they made the seals in his own blood, within the wounds, Hokage-sama." With that, the doors shut with an air of finality. Slumping, the blonde felt twice her apparent age. "This is why I hate being right." Seeing the advent of rage in her apprentice's eyes, Tsunade decided to focus the emotions into something useful. "Shizune, I want the accounts of the Hyuga, the Uchiha, the Yamanaka and both Anbu brought before me. It is my decision that financial restitution will have to be made at this time. Except for Shinji. He's getting something much worse." Nodding dully, the brunette left the room. Looking around at the tired jonin, it occurred to Tsunade that it had been a very long day, and several things still needed to be done tomorrow. But first. "Kurenai, I saw your student present some medical cream to Naruto in the Chunin exam recordings. You wouldn't happen to have a sample, would you?" Blinking at the sudden change of subject, the Genjusta mistress reached into a pack and tossed a small bottle to the Hokage. "I'm not sure what she uses, but Hinata is actually quite good at this sort of thing. We practically bathe in the stuff after training." Testing a sample between her fingers, the blonde smiled at the quality. The idea that had been forming in the back of Tsunade's mind erupted in full force. "I would like you to bring Hinata with you tomorrow at about 8. Try to nab the Haruno too, if you can. I think I have a proposition for you." Nodding, Kurenai led the subdued and reflective Asuma and Guy out for the evening. They all agreed. Alcohol was needed if any sleep was going to be found. Thinking about what she had learned, Tsunade decided there really wasn't any choice at all. Taking a pen, she began to write a series of orders to be ratified the next day. "I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Uzumaki Naruto is made Chunin on my authority. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Uzumaki Naruto is made my second apprentice on my authority. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Uzumaki Naruto is to be granted in financial restitution the sum of 2 million ryo from the Uchiha account for blatant attacks of violence on his person and attempts to sabotage his career. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Uzumaki Naruto is to be granted in financial restitution the sum of 1,500,000 ryo from the account of one Yamanaka Kenshin for conspiracy to physically assault and inducing long-term injury. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Uzumaki Naruto is to be granted in financial restitution the sum of 1,500,000 ryo from the estate of Yamanaka Jinzo for conspiracy to physically assault and inducing long-term injury. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Uzumaki Naruto is to be granted in financial restitution the sum of 3 million ryo from the account of Hyuga Shinji for conspiracy to commit assault and murder. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that, due to the abuse of authority that Hyuga Shinji has committed, he shall be remanded to the Konoha Mental Health Care Facility for the remainder of his natural life. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that, due to the abuse of authority that Hyuga Shinji has committed, a full review of the caged bird seal be conducted, and a method developed to remove it from the ninja forces, in case this effort is repeated. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Uzumaki Naruto, due to health concerns, be released to the care of myself, and Jonin Shizune for medical treatment and rehabilitation. To ensure maximum focus is given to the problem, both myself, Senju Tsunade and Jonin Shizune are to be released from all professional, legal, past, present and future obligations to Konoha for the duration of the treatment, which will be ongoing. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that Jiraiya of the Sannin will be my replacement and temporary successor for the position of Hokage. He will not have the authority to issue A-rank or S-rank missions for the first 6 months of my absence. Nor will he be able to modify or establish treaties with foreign powers. If my absence goes beyond 6 months, He is to be instated as the 6th Hokage with the privileges and responsibilities that entails. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that the genin known as Uchiha Sasuke be permanently stripped of ninja rank and confined to the AMBU cell block, code-named the Underworld, for the duration of his natural life. Genetic samples may be taken and distributed to a maximum of 6 kunoichi candidates and 6 civilian candidates. Samples will stop upon the completion of 21 successful pregnancies. No sexual intercourse is to be granted to Uchiha Sasuke for security reasons. Candidates will be reviewed by the acting Hokage and suitable clan heads. There would be more tomorrow, and she'd have to be careful of the order of sealing, but now the opening volley was set. Okay, you old idiots, you want a war? Well, you sure as hell have got one. Haruno Sakura really didn't think that the world should start so early today. Yet, forgetting to turn off the alarm, she found herself eating some toast at the bloody hour of 6 a.m. after spending hours outside of operating rooms and being emotionally wrung like a sponge yesterday. She was actually looking forward to some rest and relaxation. Sleep in, visit Naruto and the others in the hospital, see if Ino wanted to get a bite. Shuddering at the sudden chill, Sakura took a sip of tea. Oh, and get up the guts to find out if Kakashi-sensei knew what was going to happen to Sasuke. As much as she wanted to, Sakura couldn't really believe that the punishment would be light. Sasuke had broken some major laws, and the actions against the retrieval team wouldn't go over very well. Realistically, the Uchiha was looking at anything from jail time to execution, something she couldn't decide how she felt about. Snorting into her tea, Sakura took a moment to look at her motivations rather frankly. Heck, last week I probably would have clocked Naruto over the head for hurting poor Sasuke. CHA. She might love Sasuke, or believe that she loved Sasuke, but Sakura wasn't just a doll. Despite her lack of original skills, she too saw herself as a Konoha ninja, and Sasuke's actions were difficult to shrug off. Traitors were one of the most vilified elements of the Konoha Academy's history lessons. The names of various traitors were hammered into their minds, along with the horrific deaths and chaos that ended their lives, to the point that it was one of the worst insults a person could use. Heck, the kids on the playground were never, ever cruel enough to use it casually as an insult. Not even against Naruto, and he was one of the most picked upon kids in the entire place. Of course, successful traitors like Orochimaru were not mentioned as much, for fear of inspiration and corruption. What made it worse was the intensely personal nature of Sasuke's betrayal. He had hurt her, devalued her, and spit upon the bonds that they had formed in Team 7. Although she hadn't been thrilled about the team with Naruto there, Sakura had to admit they formed an interesting little pseudo-family. A group of comrades that had taken a very special place in each other's hearts, and a bond that tied them all together. Spitting upon the bond hurt more than anything else she could think of, outside of seeing Naruto wrapped up like a mummy. The whole situation made her heart ache and head throb. However, you don't simply go from obsessing about someone for years to cursing their name. Sakura's feelings for the Uchiha were still there, tempered by recent events, but still central to her worldview. Without Sasuke, she felt like nothing. The sad truth of it was, Sakura had built her ninja career around her precious Sasuke-kun, and was now far behind both of her squad mates. Was it even worth it, after being let down like that? Would the trials in the Land of Waves, the Chunin exam, and the missions in between truly become that worthless to her? A sudden flash of green caught her eyes, bringing Sakura's attention to the orange sun behind the trees outside. Suddenly, she thought of Lee and Naruto, two crazy losers who trained with everything they had to become strong. The image brought a smile to her lips. Focusing her resolve, Sakura was sure of one thing: she didn't want to quit anymore. What happened with Sasuke would happen, despite what she may or may not want, but she was a ninja and that would not change now. Sighing at the odd sense of loss, Sakura thought about another pot of tea before hearing a light knock on the door. Blinking at the noise, she hurried over to find a slightly haggard Kurenai and Hinata waiting on her doorstep. "Good morning, Kurenai-sensei, Hinata-san. Was there something I could do for you?" Nodding at the greeting, the Genjutsu mistress left no room for debate. "Good morning, Haruno-san. You've been summoned to the Hokage's office with us this morning. We need to leave within the next few minutes to get there on time." Eyes widening in confusion, Sakura shrugged, went back to the kitchen to shut off the stove, and proceeded to lock the door on her way out. With the luck Sakura had been dealing with this week, it wouldn't surprise her if she was supposed to kill Sasuke today. God only knew what else the Hokage would want this early in the morning. "Get the demon! Monster, stay away from the freak! Murderer, filth monster!" There's a fun side effect about limiting a person's mental growth for nearly a decade: they have trouble with their memory. That might not seem like such a big deal, but our childhoods define us like no other time period in our life. With the limiting seals removed, years of suppressed memories flooded Naruto's dreamscape like a tsunami. Every time he was yelled at, scorned, spit upon, or neglected was revisited in nightmarish technicolor. A plethora of agonies attacked without warning, since Jiraiya had been less than forthcoming about the reasons for his treatment. Under a forced sleep jutsu, Naruto couldn't even cry out in pain. Luckily, physical abuse was fairly unusual. The first couple of villagers caught had been killed by the ANBU. But that didn't stop people from using every other method at their disposal to obliterate his happiness. Shouting was common, along with vile and nasty glares, thrown trash and swearing, not the sort of childhood a well-adjusted kid went through. Surprisingly, though, the darkness couldn't overwhelm him completely. Naruto was stronger than that. For every thrown bottle he'd remember ramen with the third, every cold look was countered by a hug from Ayam, every insult to his dreams suddenly seemed minor to Irika's height. A kind smile from Hinata or Sakura, a hand up from Sasuke, acknowledgement from Haku, a pat on the head from Jiraiya, a smirk from Tsunade. All of these events built a barrier that held back the hate and pain in Naruto's mind. Even as the lack of seals opened the floodgates to his darkness, Naruto's will brought forward the goodness in his heart. Although after that night, it would take a lot of effort to sleep properly. Relief finally came when the chakra holding the sleep jutsu failed from his struggles. Gasping, the blonde woke, with a start, grasping his head in pain. Why the heck did it feel like his brain was on fire? Ah, you're awake, Naruto-kun. Looking up, Naruto blinked at the smiling visage of Shizune. Shizune-chan? What happened? My head is killing me. Holding his forehead in pain, Naruto missed the flash of suppressed rage that flashed through the young woman's eyes. Yesterday's revelations were still too raw and fresh for her to shrug off. Tsunade-sama will be able to explain it better than me, Naruto-kun. Yesterday's treatment just aggravated some old injuries that we had to deal with. It might take some time to adjust. I'm here to check in on your status, as well as the rest of the retrieval team. Tsunade-sama will be by later to look in on you, and deal with any questions, okay? Nodding slightly, Naruto then remembered one little detail he had to deal with. Shizune-chan? Can it wait until after I go? Blushing slightly, Shizune couldn't keep back a small chuckle. Of course, Naruto-kun, go right ahead. Just let me know if you need any help, okay? Smiling, the blonde tried to get out of bed, and fell flat on his face. Blinking in surprise, Shizune hurried over to help him off the floor. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Naruto's response was slow in coming. After the headache had calmed down, he had realized a distinct lack of pain in his body. Naruto knew that he healed faster than normal, but this was a little ridiculous, even for him. However, every movement felt really weird. If he tried to move his left foot, his right arm twitched, his right arm caused his right calf to shift, and so on. It was like his wires were crossed or something. Shizune-chan, why can't I move right? Sighing, the brunette medic helped him to stand and guided him to the bathroom. That's part of what Tsunade-sama will be talking to you about, Naruto-kun. Don't worry though, we'll do our best to help you fix it. After a slightly embarrassing 5 minutes for everyone involved, Shizune and Naruto returned to the room blushing. Hey, she might be a medic, but she liked the kid. Seeing him this helpless was a little embarrassing and worrisome. Any other feelings were completely inappropriate for the situation and their respective ages. Not to say they didn't happen, but that was an issue for another time. Alright Naruto-kun, let's have a look at your injuries, okay? Nodding rapidly, Naruto tried to put the last few minutes out of his mind. A process that was surprisingly difficult compared to his normal efforts. Shizune activated her healing chakra palm, and proceeded to scan all over his body, another action that Naruto was having trouble ignoring for some reason. The results were nothing less than shocking. Naruto's wounds were long gone. Every tear, every scrape, every missing chunk was completely resorted, as if the injury was never there. All signs of the damage to his arm had disappeared, and she couldn't even tell that there was a graft in place. This sort of cellular regeneration, though. Well, Naruto-kun, it's much better than I expected. Leave those bandages on for a few more days, and you'll be right as rain. Now I want you to stay put, okay? No leaving this room for any reason. In the meantime, I'll have some food brought up to help you recover your strength. Leaving the flustered young man, Shizune headed out to check on the others, after talking to the cat-faced ANBU guard at the door, of course. They wouldn't want any accidents while Naruto was recovering, now would they? Hyuga Hayashi was not a man to be kept waiting. After the abduction of Elder Shinji the night before, he had fully expected a summons to the tower within the hour. However, with no word all evening, the Hyuga clan head was forced to come himself to demand information. That was bad enough. However, the standing orders to deny him entry until the Hokage let him in were downright rude. As the head of the most powerful remaining clan in Konoha, an audience with the Hokage on clan business was his right and privilege. Being forced to wait like this was a most grievous insult, one he would be explaining in great depth to that blonde witch once they were in the same room. Seeing the form of Shizune, the Hokage's apprentice, approaching, Hayashi decided this was the ideal time to act. Everyone knew that her love of the Hokage was only matched by her love of preserving her mistress's image. Surely she could understand how bad it was to alienate a clan as powerful as the Hyuga? Poor Hayashi. Standing abruptly, Hayashi blocked Shizune's way to the office. Shizune, what is the meaning of this? The Hyuga are most displeased by this theft of Shinji-sama. I must be allowed to see the Hokage to correct this injustice. Giving him a cold glance, she was uncharacteristically blunt. Hayashi-sama, the Hokage will meet with you once there is room in her schedule. She is, after all, an extremely busy woman. Shifting to the side, Shizune bypassed the shocked man completely, locking the door behind her. No one had dared to talk like that to him in years. There would be blood over this outrage. But that was not the end of it. Jonin Kurenai, along with his eldest and the Haruno brat, also proceeded to the door ahead of him. What was this idiocy? Hinata. Stopping at the cold tone, Hinata timidly stopped in front of her father. Yes, father? Looking down his nose, Hayashi practically growled, Why are you going to the Hokage's office? Stepping between the two, Kurenai coolly replied for her charge. Hinata was practically her little sister, and she would be damned if this jerk tore her apart before an important meeting. Judging from yesterday, Tsunade-sama was probably still in a bad mood. We were summoned, Hayashi-sama, and are responding as loyal ninja of the leaf. If you would excuse us. Guiding the two girls through the door, the click of the lock seemed to echo in the air. Hayashi was not amused. Perhaps a talk with the advisors' council in the next couple of days would beat some sense into that woman. If anyone could manage it, those two could. Poor, stupid Hayashi. Smiling at the small victory, Kurenai turned in relief, only to sweat drop at the sight of Tsunade sleeping on her desk, dead to the world. It was a bit of an adjustment after dealing with the third for so many years. Shizune was already acting to rectify the situation, though. Tsunade-sama. It's time to wake up. Your appointment with Jonin Kurenai, Hyuga Hinata, and Haruno Sakura is about to begin. A small snore was the only response. Tsunade-sama. Bolting up, the Hokage's head seemed to increase in size by a factor of 6, scaring the occupants of the room into submission. Although Sakura noted to ask later if she was the one who taught Irika-sensei that trick. Enough. I'm awake, Shizune. Shrinking back, her apprentice nodded quickly. Ayano. Looking up, Tsunade saw the nervous visage of Hinata, eyes widening slightly. This is the one who Shinji thought could kill Naruto? She looks like she could barely hurt a fly. Gulping, Hinata hated herself for asking, but felt this was her duty. Hokage-sama, my father is waiting outside. Should we come back later? Frowning at the sheer terror the child seemed to be suppressing, Tsunade shook her head. No, I summoned you three, not him. In fact, that reminds me of something. Reaching into her desk, Tsunade pulled out some papers for review. Taking a selection of them, she then wrote out 2 or 3 new orders and sealed them with the Hokage stamp to make it official. Shizune. Take these to the bank at once. I also want the amounts to be removed from the accounts, not transferred. With his luck, it would get lost in a paper misfiling. Oh, and I want the red form to be processed last. Blinking at the odd requests, Shizune read over the orders with widening eyes, but Tsunade-sama. These orders. Smirking at the look, she shot the stupefied girl a wink. When I play hardball, I don't kid around. Besides, with Hayashi stuck here for a bit, there is no better time to accomplish such actions. The entire total amount must be removed from the bank before you give them that red order. Let's see the 2 old farts deal with this little mess. Oh, and feel free to remove your savings for the trip as well. Nodding absently, Shizune fled for the bank as quickly as possible. Smiling at her surprised guests, Tsunade had them take a seat. Now then, first things first. Sakura. Gulping at the tone, Sakura tried to force a smile past her fear. There were only 1 or 2 things that the Hokage might want to talk about with her right now. Neither of them was extremely pleasant if brought up over the protests of the Hyuga clan head. I wanted for you to hear about the actions being taken against Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto from me directly. Kakashi was sent on an S-rank mission after their successful retrieval yesterday, and this is unfortunately a touchy subject. Believe me, as much as I'd like to deny it, I've been there. Confused about the comment concerning Naruto, Sakura squared her shoulders. This was going to hurt, no matter what she thought or did. Uchiha Sasuke, due to his traitorous acts and conspiracy to willfully assault Konoha ninja with enemy forces, is to be imprisoned without the possibility of parole. 2 jonin and 6 genin of Konoha were put at risk because of his actions, something that cannot be forgiven. He will be granted no visitors, and is permanently banned from ever regaining his position. Sakura wanted to cry, but simply looked down in sorrow. Sasuke might have been someone she loved deeply, but even she couldn't help but acknowledge it could have been worse. She could have seen his head falling in the central square. Pinching her nose at the pain in Sakura's eyes, Tsunade continued, as to Naruto. Lifting her head in confusion, Sakura blinked in surprise. What's wrong? I thought that he was going to be alright. Thinking for a minute, Tsunade made a series of hand seals. Kurenai was impressed by the feat. That was a very high-level security seal genjutsu, and would have left her gasping for a day or so. Tsunade didn't even look winded. What I am about to reveal to you is a fairly important secret. The level of secrecy involved won't matter in about 2 days, so you can talk to others about it then. But until 48 hours pass, not one word of this can reach anyone in the village. Not your family, not your friends, not even Kakashi. Do you 3 understand? Nodding, the 3 kunoichi leaned in. They might be ninja, but secrets were also the sort of thing that any group of females wanted to hear. Especially about a boy they knew. Naruto was a mess when he came in. I will not lie, if Kakashi hadn't been met with those medics before returning, Naruto would be dead right now. That brought a chill to everyone's spines. Hearing about how 2 friends had nearly killed each other was never a pleasant conversation. In the course of his treatment, we discovered that someone had placed limiting seals on Naruto years ago. There are suppressors on everything from his natural memory to muscle movements. We identified numerous people involved in the placement, and brought in the suspects for review last night. I'm sure that the Hyuga were most displeased when Shinji was captured for questioning. Starting, Hinata looked at the Hokage in shock as Shinji-sama hurt Naruto-kun. Nodding in resignation, Tsunade was almost shocked by the fire in the little Hyuga's eyes. Was it because of me? Did I do something? No, Hinata, not exactly. The nature of the seal appeared to be some sort of failsafe. If triggered correctly, though, it would have caused a heart attack. Seeing the looks of surprise on the 2 girls' faces, she decided to continue before things got out of hand. Apparently, some people got it into their heads that Naruto's claims that being Hokage couldn't be allowed to occur. Over the course of a couple of years, each group added some different seals. I won't release all the names right now, but they'll be common knowledge by the end of the week. The final result, however, was not something that we were expecting. Shaking her head in shock, Sakura stared at the Hokage. But that makes no sense. Naruto might be a little annoying, but why would anyone do that to a kid? Tsunade sighed in regret. I cannot answer that at the moment, Sakura, although I'm sure you'll find out soon enough. What is important is that Jiraiya removed the seals last night, resulting in all of that power returning. The result was practically the equivalent of a Kekkai Genkai, rapid healing unlike anything I have ever seen before. This being said after I saw Naruto take a lethal strike to the chest when we first met. It is truly astounding. Shaking her head, Sakura smiled lightly, but that's a good thing, isn't it? Naruto actually had a Kekkai Genkai, and now it's fully awakened? No, he had something like a Kekkai Genkai, and his problems are not finished. Because of the damage the seals generated, Naruto's entire muscle memory has to be rewritten. Not to mention, his chakra control is worse than ever. It will make his ninja duties significantly more difficult to facilitate, and rehabilitation will be ongoing. From what I understand, he isn't even coordinated enough at the moment to walk in a straight line. Gulping, Sakura nodded. That did sound very bad, especially for a ninja. A miscoordination in the field could result in dead teammates and failed missions. Not something that Konoha could risk. Noting the depression, Tsunade decided to get to the heart of the matter. Don't worry, Sakura. I'm going to deal with his recovery, along with Shizune, directly. However, to get a better idea of his general abilities, I was hoping that you could explain the training program that Kakashi put you through. After that, I might have a better idea what to do to help Naruto, and yourself for that matter. I don't think that Team 7 can survive the current situation, do you? Nodding in defeat, Sakura began to talk. The head of Konoha's #1 bank had seen many things, but the orders in front of him were more disturbing than Gai's sunset genjutsu. How much do you need taken out of circulation? Shizune stared down the bureaucrat with ease. Years of Tsunade's antics had made her immune to the manipulations of banks and moneylenders. 8 million ryo from the listed accounts. I don't see what the problem is, in all honesty. Eyes tearing in pain, The banker gestured at the numbers in frustration. Some of these families are among the most valued in Konoha. I can't just take 3 million ryo from the Hyuga without explanation. Not to mention that one of these accounts doesn't exist anymore. Yamanaka Jinzo's account was reabsorbed when he died against Sound. Shrugging, she easily countered, then removed the contents from the Yamanaka clan. When they reabsorbed his account, they became liable for his debts. Also, the Hyuga elders don't bother with personal accounts, so the fine will have to come from them directly. Grumbling, the official gathered the necessary funds, finishing pilling the last of the money in front of Shizune within an hour. Nodding at the amount, Shizune proceeded to seal the balance into a personal sealing scroll for safekeeping. Now that has been accomplished, I have been told to present you with this executive order. Eyes narrowing in irritation, he snapped up the paper. I, Senju Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, do hereby decree that, until such time that a full review of the accounts is made, all funds and properties of the Namikaze estate held in trust be frozen until an in-depth analysis is made and presented to the Hokage personally. Gaping at the order, the banker wanted to cry. This order will tie up nearly 20% of our remaining sources of available revenue. Between the costs of repairing the village and the day-to-day missions, this will make running the village practically impossible. Staring down the little man until he flinched, Shizune just smiled pleasantly. Then you had better get to work, any? Oh, and on that note. Handing him the red order, Shizune left, thankful that she had cleared out her account before entering the office. Gulping, he looked it over before crying. The bank was ruined. I, Senju Tsunade, do hereby decree, as executive officer of the Senju Trust, that all facilities, resources, accounts and stocks of the trust be frozen until such time that a full review is preformed or a majority vote can be accomplished. Since, of the last 3 listed account heads, I am the only one still alive, I guess that means no access until I say so, any? That is, unless you can review 25,000 individual accounts, stocks and properties within less than a decade. Tsunade, Kurenai, and Hinata all stared at Sakura in shock. Feeling self-conscious, she rubbed her arms in irritation. What? Not bothering to keep the disbelief out of her voice, Tsunade listed back the high points of the discussion. Kakashi had you perform various D-rank missions, taught you the basics of tree climbing, held team meditations twice a week. He sent you into the Chunin exams with that much training and only 6 months of experience? Just how irresponsible is he? Feeling the need to defend her teacher, even if she agreed with the sentiment, Sakura was about to answer when Hinata interrupted her. Ano, Sakura-san? Kurenai-sensei didn't think about giving us access to the Chunin exams until our team mastered tree walking, water walking, and tree walking while preforming the leaf balancing exercise for an hour each. Those were just the chakra control exercises she had us do for basic training, not counting jutsu recognition and taijutsu practice for at least 2 hours a day. I think we're just surprised about the lack of similar training you received. Closing her mouth with a snap, Sakura scratched her head in embarrassment. Well, Kakashi-sensei was always at least 2 hours late, and we were usually pushed into missions as team training exercises. Plus. Looking down, she continued quietly, plus, I think that he gave Sasuke some extra help every now and then after practice. Kurenai shook her head in exasperation. Team development is all well and good, but individual skills are important too. When I saw Naruto's initial fight with Kiba, I thought he was lazy in his combat training, relying on instincts rather than form. Now, I suspect that he wasn't given any taijutsu training at all. With the help he clearly needed in the department, that's borderline criminal. Shaking her head in agreement, Tsunade sighed, not just for Naruto, but you as well, Sakura. Judging from your descriptions, Kakashi's reports, and your own fight during the semifinals, your control is exceptional. However, despite some basic genjutsu recognition training, he didn't seem to push you as he should have. Weapons training to equalize limited strength, weight training to increase physical development, strategy tutoring to utilize your mental ability. Any of these additions to your schedule would have improved your abilities significantly. The only reason that you seemed to survive the Chunin exams in the first place is the absurd balance your team had. But that wasn't enough to ensure your progression, and luck more than anything ensured Naruto's. Looking in Sakura's eyes, Tsunade couldn't help but feel a little guilty about tearing the kid apart. She clearly had the talent, and some of the necessary drive. Sakura just lacked the practical experience that she should have received by now. Tell me that your training during the month between the second and third exams was more comprehensive at least. Blinking past the depression of their analysis, Sakura twitched. Training during the exam month? Nodding, Tsunade smiled. Yeah, I heard that Naruto was picked up by Jiraiya by accident, something about beating Ebisu for the chance. But what did Kakashi have you work on during that month? Shaking her head in resignation, Sakura sighed. Nothing. Kakashi-sensei left with Sasuke right after the second round. I didn't even see him until the finals, and didn't receive any sort of word as to what was happening that month. Suddenly, in a land far away, Kakashi felt a chill, as if someone was walking upon his grave. Leaning back, Tsunade squared her shoulders. This was going to be tricky, Haruno Sakura. I have determined the next course of action we are going to take. Since your team is effectively dissolved, I am reassigning you for a period of 6 months to work under Kurenai-sensei here. After that time period, if you have progressed significantly enough, I will recommend that Shizune take you on as an apprentice. Your stats and skills make you a serious contender for medical ninja training. If you impress Shizune enough, I will supplement your training myself. Is this understood? Saddened by the loss of her team, Sakura tried to keep firm. If she was going to move beyond being a Sasuke fangirl, then this was an excellent first step to take, however. Hokage-sama, before that could I see Naruto, and maybe Sasuke? Just to say goodbye? Seeing the look in her eye, Tsunade shrugged. It would probably hurt her more than anything, but some closure might help Sakura move on. Very well. After we're done here, Kurenai will take you to see Naruto and Sasuke for a quick visit. Remember, Naruto is still recovering but has healed up significantly from yesterday. So don't excite him too much. Also, don't mention Sasuke's punishment either. That'll be my job later tonight. Turning, the Hokage smirked at Hinata. Now, what to do with little Hinata-chan, Blinking, Hinata shivered at the gaze the Hokage directed at her. Why did she suddenly feel disturbed? Smiling, Tsunade shocked them all with her next statement. Yes, I think that you might actually have what it takes to be my new apprentice at the moment. Your chakra control is excellent, your Byakugan is a natural healer's tool, and of course there is this. Reaching into her desk, Tsunade threw a small jar in her direction. Seeing some of her special salve, Hinata looked up in confusion. Where did you get this, Hokage-sama? Kurenai gave it to me. Based upon that, your previous training and the fact that the Hyuga have managed to contribute significantly in undermining Naruto's development, you would make a perfect second apprentice. Your skills are sufficient, but more importantly, it would piss off the Hyuga elders to no end for you to help in Naruto's recovery. Hinata twitched at that, but Tsunade was too wrapped up in her rant to notice. In fact, the idea that you would be central in his recovery might give them a heart attack. Now, before you say anything, Sakura, I might have normally been willing to take you on as an apprentice if the political situation was not so bad. Lowering her hand, Sakura stared at the Hokage in confusion, a feeling she was getting rather used to in all honesty. Political? Yes, this whole mess has generated political complications that will require me, Naruto, and anyone involved in his treatment to leave the village for a bit. I'm appointing a proxy, but a message needs to be sent to certain figures within the village hierarchy. I am actually worried about your field skills at the moment, hence the training under Kurenai. However, if the business takes longer than 6 months, and your skills are sufficient, you will be offered that place under Shizune, okay? Feeling mollified, Sakura sunk in her chair. If she wanted such an opportunity, she honestly should have expected to do more than stomp up to the woman and demand it. That's when everyone else noticed that Hinata had fainted upon hearing the phrase leaving with Naruto. Yamanaka Inoichi was not a stupid man. He might be slightly pushy, a little flirty, at least when his wife wasn't around, and spoil his daughter a bit, but he was never stupid. That's why, when he saw the Hyuga clan head sitting on the bench in front of the Hokage's office, he sat down and shut up. This was obviously not going to be a misunderstanding like he thought previously. The door creaking open slowly was also not a good sign. Shizune stared at the two clan heads, then gestured them both in with barely a glance. It didn't take a mind walker of Inoichi's ability to determine that Hayashi was furious with the treatment. Hopefully, they would both leave this meeting intact. The room was empty when they entered, a fact that seemed to surprise Hayashi more than it should have. Hokage-sama, where is Hinata? Looking up from sealing some documents, Tsunade glared at the man with surprising heat. She has been sent on official business, Hayashi. Sit, we have much to talk about. Gulping at her tone, the two men sat. The incident where Tsunade had nearly killed Jiraiya for peeking on her suddenly flashed before their eyes. Settling in, Tsunade handed 2 of the papers on front of her to Hayashi. For your information, Hayashi, these orders will be carried out. They are sealed, official, and not going away. Your clan has screwed up for the last time. Reading over the orders, Hayashi fumed in rage. What is the meaning of this? These actions will undermine the safety of our clan and bloodline. Glaring the man into silence, Tsunade spoke with finality. That was before Hyuga Shinji overstepped his bounds. Clan protections only remain when the techniques are applied to clan members, Hayashi. When Shinji decided he was above himself and sealed a civilian of the leaf that left your entire sealing school open for perusal and attack to prevent repetition. Going deathly quiet, Hayashi looked at his Hokage in an approximation of shock. You are accusing Hyuga Shinji of applying the caged bird seal to a Konoha civilian? Nodding firmly, Tsunade smirked at his look. Even if Naruto is a ninja now, and the seals seem to be a simpler variation than normal, the sealing happened years ago. A full account of the events has already been supplied by Shinji, and his punishment stands. I cannot allow the Hyuga elders to think that it is ever acceptable to seal ordinary Konoha citizens, and even if this current punishment stops some attempts, now that it has been proven possible, countermeasures must be developed and used. Seeing that Hayashi was working himself up to a righteous fury, Inoichi decided to step in before things got any worse. Hokage-sama, while Hyuga-sama reviews what I am sure to be troubling news, I wish to inquire about the large withdrawal made from the Yamanaka accounts this morning. The bank was less than forthcoming. Looking at her fellow blonde in disinterest, the Hokage replied ironically, actually, you're here for the same reasons that Hayashi is. 2 of your clan members also placed seals upon Uzumaki Naruto, and an acceptable fine was determined. The Yamanaka clan accounts were simply held liable due to the fact that one of the perpetrators passed in the action against Sound. The other is still in custody, so he probably doesn't realize the damage to his account yet. Gaping, Inoichi worked to find his voice. Hokage-sama, I might not particularly like the kid, but I would never condone an attack like this. Surely we can come to some sort of arrangement? Shaking her head, Tsunade refused to give an inch. I have seen too many of these arrangements fall apart once the ink dries on the paper. Putting mentally crippling seals on a child under 6 is abuse in the worst form, not to mention enjoying said child being attacked for 10 minutes, as if it was a play. If you have issue with this, or the resulting penalties, then speak to Yamanaka Kenshin when he is released tomorrow into your care. Otherwise the matter is closed. Noting the position of the son, she decided that they had gotten all she was going to give them for the moment. Now, if you 2 gentlemen will excuse me, I have another appointment in the hospital. Shaking in rage, Hayashi glared at the woman with as much fire as possible. This isn't over, Tsunade. When I talk with the Council of Advisors. The killing intent nearly caused the 2 men to pass out. Standing up slowly, a sudden image of a hungry lioness entered Inoichi's mind as the Hokage glared at Hayashi with her full fury. He was lucky it didn't induce a brain aneurysm. If you are the leaf symbol, you are a soldier under my command. I don't care about clans, or privileges, or what you seem to think that 2 dried-up old jonin can grant you. The simple fact of the matter is that I am the commanding officer of Konoha. Now go slink back to your clans, let them know about this punishment, and understand this. Reaching down, Tsunade casually snapped the edge of her new desk as if it was tissue paper. Cross me, and I can break you. Now leave my sight. The 2 jonin, who had each faced armies, assassins and angry wives at one point or another, left with their tails between their legs. Uzumaki Naruto was confused, irritated, and worried beyond all limits. Something very wrong had happened. When the food had come up 20 minutes after Shizune-chan had left, the lack of ramen didn't even register. He was starving, and felt like he could eat an elephant, or maybe the Kyuubi, with enough hot sauce. However, at that point, he was shocked to discover he could barely hold his chopsticks. After 3 shouts from sticking himself in the eye with eating utensils, the purple-haired ANBU at the door sent in a shadow clone to help. Having amassed, but obviously attractive woman feeding him led to emotions and reactions that he really didn't know how to deal with. The second assisted bathroom trip had really not helped matters. Then, after being bored for hours, Sakura-chan had come to visit. She tried to stay upbeat, but Naruto had liked her for years. He knew her emotions, thoughts, speech patterns, and methods better than any person in Konoha besides Ino. That knowledge had only improved as they became teammates and comrades. Every action seemed to scream distress and depression, so he tried to cheer her up as best as he could. Then she hugged him. Haruno Sakura had never initiated physical contact with him in a non-violent manner in their entire association together. Something big had to be up. Then she explained, she couldn't tell him everything because of Bachan, but some changes were being made to the teams. She might not be able to see him for a while, but was planning on getting stronger before they met again. She couldn't tell him about Sasuke, but Bachan would ladder, and she just wanted him to know one thing: I don't think that I am all that impressive and lovable right now, Naruto, but I'm glad that if someone wanted to bother liking me, it was a good guy like you. Find someone better, please? You deserve it more, and I think I would rather be your friend. That's the least I can do. Seeing the tears in her eyes, Naruto couldn't help but agree. It hurt somewhat. He had loved Sakura for years, but not as badly as it could have. Instead of shouting, screaming, or hitting, she said that she wanted him to be happy, and to be his friend. Naruto really didn't have enough friends to turn that offer down, and besides, her reaction to Sasuke after Bachan healed him the first time was like a sledgehammer. This just finalized something that hadn't happened yet. It hurt, but it could have been worse. Sakura left after that, saying she had to check on something before going home for the night. Looking out at the setting sun, Naruto sighed. If he could walk without falling from the stupid bed, he would have escaped hours ago to find out what had freaked his teammate out so badly. What was taking Bachan so long? Hearing the door open, Naruto was surprised to see Shikamaru walking in. "Hey Naruto, how's it going?" Smiling at the company, Naruto greeted the lazy Chunin with enthusiasm. "Hey, Shika. How's everyone else doing?" The conversation was light after that. Shikamaru was still reeling slightly from the insanity of completing his first mission successfully, and the attention of that crazy Suna Kunoichi. Naruto was still having trouble with his muscle control and concerns about Sakura and Sasuke. However, always the curious one, Shikamaru finally asked about the mission. Leaning back, Naruto sighed. "It was awful, Shikamaru. Sasuke actually tried to kill me. Those attacks were not designed to wound or knock me out, they were lethal strikes. How am I supposed to feel about that?" Somewhat at a loss, Shikamaru was about to answer when the door opened again. Looking up, the smiling visage of the fifth Hokage greeted them, with Shizune and Hinata both following quickly. "Hey there Naruto, let's chat." Jiraiya nearly growled at the paperwork in front of him. Damn it, he was never letting that woman sweet-talk him with cleavage again. No amount of flashing was worth this. Getting talked into the position of temporary Rokudain was very irritating. The Toad Sage had put up with a hyperactive blonde for nearly a month in order to get out of this job. Although, having him pull off a variation of the Rasengan within such a short amount of time was fairly impressive, not that he would ever admit that, Naruto had enough of an ego as it was. However, Tsunade refused to play fair. While his acceptance of Naruto as an apprentice would have gotten him independent and out of sight as well, Tsunade could do so much more. Granting him Chunin rank to ensure some autonomy was an excellent tactic, and writing the whole thing off as a medical issue gave the busted blonde nearly undisputed control of the case. After all, Tsunade wasn't known as the world's best medical ninja for nothing. Plus, she would be able to more effectively figure out his weaknesses and the needed treatments if they were dealt with in isolation. That didn't mean that things were going to be smooth sailing on the home front. Lacking the ability to issue A-rank and S-rank missions, Jiraiya would be unable to get more than 60% of the needed revenue for Konoha to be run effectively. In addition, freezing the Namikaze estate and Senju Trust took care of most of the liquid assets in the village. That meant that the missions that Jiraiya would normally be able to assign on behalf of Konoha to maintain its infrastructure and give genin teams something to complain about wouldn't happen. A great ninja village couldn't survive on only C-rank and B-rank missions alone. Not to mention, the clans were going to be up in arms. The Hyuga were probably going to side with the Advisors' Council after the loss of Shinji, while the Yamanaka were going to be tangled up for a few days trying to figure out what to do with Kenshin. That would, in turn, cause the Nara and Akimichi clans to debate how to present themselves in relation to their longtime allies. The Inuzuka would probably follow Tsum's lead, and the Aburaim would stay neutral unless forced to act. That wasn't counting the divided loyalties various ninja groups would feel in relation to the Hokage and her choices. With this instability, spinning the opinions of the collective Konoha ninja force would be nearly impossible. All this chaos over a threat to one little boy. It was amazing and terrifying at the same time. Hopefully, the generated pressure and chaos would cause the daimyo to remember to keep his nose out of ninja business, and acknowledge the strength of the Hokage position. If he played with the power of his authority too much, using the council and Danzo as proxies, it would destabilize the place to the point of civil war. Tsunade was right in trying to fix this mess, and removing herself from the equation and leaving her own proxy weakened the bargaining position of the other side significantly. Although, signing out those scrolls as healer's aides was pushing the farce a bit much. Still, there were some things that he could do. Nothing was going to be accomplished tonight, because his authority was not to be activated until daybreak. However, since Asuma had been ordered to hang around until needed, it would be a shame not to try a little negotiation. Best to be as upfront as soon as possible, before any of the opposition formed counterclaims. Luckily, the third son was finally sober after his binge the night before and should be fine to travel. Sighing, Jiraiya looked over his beloved village, lost in his thoughts. Did she really have to take the hat with her? Wearing that was going to be one of the best parts of this job. Naruto looked around the room, long suppressed danger instincts blaring. He hadn't felt pressure like this since that time he painted the Hokage monument. Shrugging it off as his imagination, the former prankster squinted at the Hokage in anger. Hey Bachan, it's about time that you showed up. I've been going nuts trying to find out what's going on. What happened to Sasuke? What's up with my body? Why is Sakura so freaked out? Whack. Luckily the light slap on the head calmed him down, before real Rand momentum could build up. Pulling up a chair, Tsunade gestured for the rest of her subordinates to relax. This conversation was probably going to take a while. Now that I've got your attention, we've got a lot to talk about, brat. First of all, you did great on that last mission. Chances of success with the inclusion of the so-called Sound 4 were slim to none. But it still got done, and that's the important thing. Shaking his head, Naruto glared, Sound 5. Blinking in confusion at the interruption, Tsunade glared at Naruto, what was that, brat? Staring defiantly right back, Naruto proudly stated, Sound 5. That bone guy was fighting me before Sasuke broke out of the barrel. If Fuzzy Brows hadn't shown up, I wouldn't have been able to continue after that bastard. He was good, Bachan, really good. Taking note of that little bit of data, Tsunade wondered if the corpse had been dealt with yet. Regardless, you managed to bring back Sasuke to Konoha. However, Naruto, this might hurt, but you need to hear it. Sasuke is going to be punished very badly for his actions. Not only for hurting you, but the fact that his defection led to others to be badly injured as well. That's probably what upset Sakura. Gulping at the serious tone, Naruto looked down at his bandaged hands in worry. How badly is badly, Bachan? Letting out an explosive breath, Tsunade looked at the ceiling, not wanting to see the look in his eyes when it came crashing home. Uchiha Sasuke is no longer a ninja. His rank is removed and will never be restored, his chakra is sealed completely, and he will never be removed from prison. For the rest of his limited lifespan, Uchiha Sasuke will remain in ANBU custody, alone and in chains. Gasping, Naruto leaned back in shock. This wasn't what he wanted to have happen. He had a vague idea of Ero-Sennin fixing that stupid seal, a few weeks of community service, and then the reformation of Team 7. He didn't nearly fall apart, literally, in order to lose the closest thing that he had to a family. However, at the moment, Uzumaki Naruto wasn't a complete moron. Seeing his surrogate brother try to kill him had hurt Naruto badly, both physically and emotionally. Winning that fight at the Valley of the End was probably the high point of his ninja career at the moment. However, after fighting and whining in such a battle, could things really go back to the way they were? Would Sasuke really admit to Naruto's strength, or simply see him as a simple stepping stone to Itachi's death? Could they respect each other, or would they have to fight forever to see who was the strongest? These were questions that Naruto didn't know the answer to, and he wasn't sure if he wanted them. At a total loss, Naruto looked at the others in the room for guidance. Bachan was refusing to meet his gaze, Shizune-chan was smiling sadly, with Tonton managing a sorrowful look. Shikamaru was looking surprised, but was slowly relaxing. Clearly he was examining the different paths available, and sorting the ideas for latter. Hinata-chan looked sad for him, but also somehow vindicated. It was an odd look on her cute face arc. I'm doing it again. Curse you, Ero-Sennin, you're a freaking disease. Confused and hurting, Naruto was at a rare loss for words. Somehow, the silence was more telling than fanfare from the rooftops. It was cold. That was Haruno Sakura's first impression of the ANBU prison. To gain entry to this area without the normal clearance, Kurenai-sensei had blindfolded her and applied a complete sensory deprivation genjutsu. The 15 minutes that Sakura had spent trapped in her own mind were enough to cause massive amounts of pain and nausea. The sight before them just made her want to throw up. Uchiha Sasuke, beaten, broken and weak, was restrained to the point of paranoia. Each arm was bolted to the wall, his hands encased in unbending steel gloves. Sasuke's eyes had been covered, with his head fixed to the wall with leather straps. Each leg was encased in some sort of steel-lined concrete, spread-eagled and sunk into the floor. Every square inch of the restraints and Sasuke's flesh was practically coated in black ink, reinforcing the chakra drain of Jiraiya's earlier work to extreme levels. The only other additions appeared to be a set of tubes attached to the groin area, items that Sakura really didn't want to think about. However, the sudden appearance of a yellow liquid robbed her of even that small mercy. Hands covering her mouth in horror, it was all that the little cherry blossom could do not to run in and hug the prisoner. Only the strict warnings from Kurenai-sensei and her own confusion about Sasuke's recent behavior prevented Sakura from acting. That did not stop a minor gasp of Sasuke-kun though. Suddenly, Sakura was pinned by the blindfolded face of Uchiha Sasuke. What are you doing here, Sakura? Feeling the pain and hate in the boy's voice, she could barely breathe. Have you come to torment me? Beg me for a last kiss? Plead for a date? Sorry, Sakura, but that's not allowed. I'm going to be indisposed for a while. Gathering her courage, Sakura tried to take control of the situation. Why was it that the person who was standing free couldn't seem to outmatch the chakra-less bound traitor? Sasuke, why did you do it? Why did you leave us? Why did you hurt Naruto? Why did you have to hurt me? The tears were trying to escape again, but after 2 days she was mostly dry. Sneering at her broken tone, the Uchiha lashed out with his only remaining weapon, his words. Why? Why? Why the hell would I leave, you ask? Why would I hurt you and that stupid dead last? Why would I leave for Orochimaru? To get stronger. To kill my brother. You and Naruto and this entire damned village are only going to get in my way. Nothing else matters. Battered by the immense naked rage of her crush, Sakura struggled to stand, but Sasuke. We could have helped you. We could have gotten stronger together. Naruto would have done anything for you. I would have done anything for you. I cared, and care, so much for you. Obviously biting his tongue, Sasuke coolly replied, so why did you report me? Sakura's jaw clicked shut in shock. Seeing an opening, Sasuke stuck as the trained ninja that he was, why did you report me? There were a dozen ways for you to cover for my escape before anything would have happened. I could have been in sound before anyone actually knew I had left. If you really loved me, wouldn't you have let me go, respecting my wishes? So tell me, Sakura, why did you turn me in? Looking at the floor, feeling the guilt of all of Sasuke's pain, Sakura tried to answer, because Sasuke, Orochimaru was going to destroy you. He would take everything about you and warp it into something unrecognizable. You would have become his toy, his tool, his puppet. I couldn't let that happen. Grinding his teeth in impotent rage, Sasuke growled out, and that would be better than this? No chakra, no career, no training, no revenge, not even a glimpse of light, just a tube to pee in and a single meal a day all alone. Oh, this is a major improvement. Losing control, Sakura was a little glad the boy she once cared for couldn't see her tears. Unfortunately, the sound of falling water seemed to tip him off. Oh, so now you cry? How wonderfully compassionate, you bloody annoying bitch. You know? I almost wish that I had taken you up on that offer to join me now. Sakura felt Kurenai tense behind her, but couldn't find the energy to care. Yeah, it would have been wonderful. I agree, you tag along, and one of the Sound 4 kill you when we reach the meeting place. That way, I get to sound in peace and you get a whole 2 minutes of happiness joining the love of your life. I guess that they say hindsight is 20/20, but what the hell? I learned my lesson. If I ever get out of here, kill the weak one quickly so they can't alert the useless herd. Remember that, you self-absorbed whore. You don't love me, you just want to use me to feel better about your pathetic self. Standing there in shock, Sakura felt the last of her resolve shatter. Sasuke was lost to her forever. Now what was she supposed to do? I think that is quite enough. Kurenai had never really cared that much about Hiruno Sakura. She had decided on training Hinata years ago, before the academy graduation had ever happened. Therefore, other than a quick glance at Sakura's data sheet and some observations during the Chunin exam, it was safe to say she knew next to nothing about her. That didn't mean that she felt such abuse was deserved by anyone, let alone a 12-year-old girl. Hinata had moved on to bigger and better things, so fixing this mess was now her responsibility. Listen here, Uchiha, and know this, you will remain here for the rest of your life. The Hokage is not budging, the advisor council has washed its hands of you, and soon the populace will know that the Uchihas breed traitors better than any other clan. At least Itachi was able to make his escape. You were handled by the weakest student in your graduating class. So deal with your failure, and reflect on your hate alone. Come, Sakura, I think that this is as close to goodbye as you are going to get. Nodding weakly, the girl turned to follow her new sensei and new path. It hurt so badly, but Sakura had to get stronger on her own now. She couldn't only rely on others for happiness anymore. She was going to be all alone. What is the red chakra? The sudden question threw the two kunoichi off in shock. You said I was beaten by the dobe? You call me a traitor and a weakling? Then I'll tell you that anything that has 2 chakras is a bigger monster than I ever could be. Narrowing her eyes, Kurenai hit a seal matrix near the far end of the room, lighting coursed across Sasuke's limp form, shocking him into painful slumber. Turning to the surprised genin, Kurenai almost cursed at the confusion on Sakura's face. Having been in some questionable situations before, Kurenai was sure that, if Sakura was as smart as they said, she would puzzle this situation out for days. She couldn't be allowed to come up with theories about the Uchiha's last words. In her state, no one could predict what would happen. This had to be stopped before things got too out of hand. Sakura, I will not be able to answer any questions concerning his last comment, due to village security. However, we will meet tomorrow afternoon to see how you are doing and plan about your integration into Team 8, okay? Nodding absently, Sakura was caught off guard when the security genjutsu was reapplied. Picking up the now silent girl, Kurenai sighed. She was going to have a hell of a day tomorrow. Maybe the new Rokudan would have some ideas on how to handle this mess. Sighing at the forlorn look, Tsunade squared her shoulders. They were not out of the woods yet, Unfortunately, Naruto, you are still in some danger. Once they heard about the result of the mission, the advisors' council started putting pressure on me to have you banished. Staring at her in shock, Naruto's shout almost beat Shikamaru's curse. Standing up, the lazy strategist was surprisingly eloquent. Hokage-sama. I was the one who led the mission, so any issue from the results of that mission is my responsibility. Why is Naruto being punished for that? Nodding in thanks to his friend, Naruto threw his 2 cents in. Yeah, Ba-chan. Why would those 2 old farts want to banish me over bringing back their precious Sasuke? I didn't make any decisions as to what would happen to him. Looking at the 2 outraged boys, and the confused Hinata, Tsunade pondered. While she was all about breaking the rules when necessary, the law of the Sandaime was not generally one of them. However, given that Hinata was going to be traveling with them for some time, and Shikamaru was among the smartest tacticians of his generation, such a secret would not keep for long. Finding the answers underneath the underneath was among the first challenges taught to the average Konoha genin. Naruto was just particularly bad at that lesson. Speaking of Naruto, there were his feelings on the matter to consider. As far as Tsunade knew, Naruto had never willingly given out the fact that he was a Jinchuriki out to anyone, well, besides possibly Gaara. As such, since this secret was so central to whom he was, releasing that information to others was a burden that he avoided like the plague. However, having some stable and dependable friends would be central to his survival in the near future. Sakura was still in shock, and no one else from his generation was anywhere near level-headed or close enough to him for releasing the secret to be a good idea. Honestly, the fact that finding someone for him to give that information out to was so difficult was a little sad. But trust had to start somewhere, and it was better if releasing the secret was somewhat Naruto's decision. Looking her fellow blonde in the eyes, Tsunade was as serious as she could manage. Naruto, if you want that answer to be clear and simple, I need to share certain truths with these 2. I would strongly recommend that you allow the release of this information, because if my impressions are correct, they can handle the facts. Would you like me to explain, or do you want to give it a go? Shock had given in to fear and resignation. Naruto realized that he should have known those old jerks would use this as an excuse to remove the foxboy. Neither had ever liked him that much, and injuring the last Uchiha was probably just the thing they needed to remove him. Seeing the hurt and confused looks on his friends' faces, Naruto sighed in defeat. Hey, if was going to be banished, he might as well go out with a bang, any? Are you sure, Bachan? Nodding firmly, Tsunade smiled in encouragement. Don't worry, Naruto, this won't get out to others unless we want it to. But Hinata is going to be involved in some close work with us over the next few months, and Shikamaru is smarter that he lets on. Even if you don't tell them, chances are they'll figure it out on their own anyways. Looking down in defeat, Naruto sighed. You tell them, Bachan. I'm no good at this sort of thing. Looking at Shikamaru and Hinata, Tsunade couldn't help but notice that they were extremely curious about all the secrecy surrounding Naruto. Troublemaker and fool he may be, but the kid was also their friend, and this was very concerning. Best to fill them in quickly then. What I am about to tell you cannot be spoken to anyone in your own generation. If this rule is broken, you will be killed with no exception or mercy. Do you understand? Seeing them each nod in the positive, Tsunade started her spiel. Approximately 13 years ago, when the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked, Nara Shikamaru was a failure for most of his life. His scores in the academy were nearly as low as Naruto. He wouldn't train if he could help it to save his life, and his greatest failure was not getting out of the Chunin exams when he had the chance, because now people actually expected things from him. In all honesty, failing at his lifelong goal of being an average ninja by the age of 12 felt like a very troublesome accomplishment. However, failing to realize the truth of the situation concerning Naruto actually left a bad taste in his mouth. Letting the soft voice of the Hokage wash over his awareness, Shikamaru made his infamous thinking pose to concentrate on the facts before him, and compare them to those gathered from his own life experiences. After calculating about 347 steps and theories, he made a number of determinations. 1. Naruto was not the Kyuubi in human form. 2. Naruto had only found out about this issue recently, probably within the last year. 3. Naruto beat Gaara with some help from this power, thus scaring the bastard into sanity. 4. Naruto was the scapegoat of the elder generation because of this. 5. The elder generations took their frustrations out on the kid, thus his bad reputation. 6. His parents and their friends blamed Naruto for the Kyuubi. 7. Because of 6, he and his generation had been programmed to some degree to hate Naruto. 8. The council's decision was based more upon than simple hatred. They would have simply killed the blonde while he was weakened otherwise. 9. The third was smoking weed if he thought that the parameters of such a limited law would protect Naruto that much. 10. If rejected by those he loved or trusted, Naruto would become a monster worse than the Kyuubi. 11. The fifth had a plan, and it was going to be very troublesome for the village. Point 12. He really didn't care that much about 11 at the moment. Hinata's thoughts were a little simpler. 1. Naruto's a living sealing scroll. 2. Without Naruto-kun, the Kyuubi would kill them all. 3. Konoha had hurt Naruto-kun. 4. She would help Naruto-kun. Hey, not everyone was born a high-level genius. Reaching out nervously, Hinata touched Naruto's hand. Seeing his shocked and nervous expression, she couldn't help but smile. He had given her the courage to fight. It was the least she could do to return the favor. Sensing no hate, malice, or evil intent in that smile, Naruto began to relax. Naruto. Looking over at Shikamaru, he was surprised by the serious look in the Chunin's eye. Tell me how you learned about this, please. I think that I need to know. Leaning back, Naruto looked at the boy in front of him. There was no hate or fear, but Shika was smarter than he looked. He was testing for something, looking for something, trying to find the piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. Apparently, he thought that broken piece was in Naruto's mind. Shrugging, Naruto began to retell the story of how he became a ninja. The tale was a fairly good one, although the mention of beating the third Hokage with his sexy jutsu caused a few raised eyebrows to twitch, and everyone listened with great enthusiasm. Nearly crying at the heartbreaking end, where the two lonely orphans bonded over the decimated form of Mizuki the traitor, Hinata gripped his hand tighter. Shikamaru just nodded. Okay, well, you're loyal and a friend. That's good enough for me. Clearing her throat, Tsunade smirked. Now that the drama is out of the way, we can continue. As much fun as this is, we are under a bit of a time constraint. Believe it or not, the council is not throwing the demon around as a reason, not directly anyways. They claim that, because the Uchiha is safely recaptured, Orochimaru will focus his attention at Konoha once again. At the same time, Akatsuki are mainly a threat because of their interest in you. Their brilliant idea is to exile you, thus drawing the Akatsuki attention away from Konoha at the moment, while we deal with Orochimaru's interest in Sasuke. Holding up a hand to stop the flow of conversation, Hinata looked at Tsunade in concern. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but who are the Akatsuki? Smiling at the initiative shown from the normally shy girl, Tsunade calmly explained. They're a group of elite S-class missing neens from across the continent. Jiraiya found out about them because Orochimaru used to be a member. To give you an idea of their strength, Uchiha Itachi is one of their members, and our sources seem to indicate that he is not the strongest member of the group. For some reason, they seem to be unusually interested in the Bijou, such as Kyuubi or Shikaku, for what reason we do not know. That is what the council wants to send Naruto out to face, alone. Frowning, Shikamaru returned to his thinking pose while Hinata simply looked horrified. Giving them a moment, Tsunade was surprised by the Nara's sudden assertion. They're stalling for time. The council is worried about something, and that something has to do with Naruto. Some member of Akatsuki has managed to make them worried enough that they're going to dangle Naruto like bait so that his attention is divided. For some reason, the advisors' council is worried about Uchiha Itachi. Looking at the young genius in shock, Tsunade nearly whistled. This kid was going to go far if she had anything to say about it. Very good, Shikamaru. I have a theory about that, but cannot reveal it at this time. Out of curiosity, though, how did you come to that conclusion? Sighing heavily, the lazy genius looked around the room's occupants. Troublesome. The way you emphasized Uchiha Itachi was the first clue. The number of effective missing ninja at that level from Konoha is extremely limited. A foreign ninja would not inspire any direct fear or animosity other than that which his reputation would generate. However, it is fairly clear that this move is motivated by personal fear. Itachi is theoretically the only other missing ninja besides Orochimaru that should inspire such feelings, and they're actually willing to put up with his infiltrations rather than face this Akatsuki. Therefore, the advisors' council is scared of him for some personal reason. Why is beyond me, besides the obvious. Looking at the shocked ninja surrounding him, the young Chunin shrugged. It was fairly obvious when you thought about it a bit. Nodding happily, Tsunade decided to drop his name in Jiraiya's lap while they were gone. Needless to say, I would normally ignore those two to the best of my ability. However, they've got the daimyo on their side, and that complicates things horribly. Naruto cocked his head in confusion, but Iruka-sensei always said that our line of command was separate from the daimyo. How could that affect your orders, Bachan? This time, Hinata took over the explanation. Politics were actually one of the few heiress lessons that she enjoyed a bit. Our orders might not come from the daimyo, but a lot of our funding and support does. If he started sending jobs to other ninja villages, Konoha would lose one of its biggest sources of income. Our economy could mimic the situation in Suna within a couple of years if the daimyo wanted it to. That's why he is such a horrible enemy to have in this situation. Nodding at the explanation, Tsunade continued, however, by treating the advisor's council as proxies, he is supporting an agenda that undermines the Hokage's position. After that became apparent, I decided to make some decisions to teach those meddling old idiots a lesson in respect. Because kid, if the reason I decided to come back to this village is removed, then I am so joining in the fun. Looking at her like she was nuts, Naruto blurted out, "How the hell are you going to manage that, Bachan?" Instead of a witty comeback, the woman looked like she had smelled something foul. Unfortunately, the damage done to you had the fun side effect of outlining some long-term problems. Mainly, the fact that several concerned citizens decided to put limiting seals on you years ago. When we removed them, a bunch of power was released, but it severely screwed with your various ninja skills. I simply wrote the whole thing off as a medical leave, giving myself and my apprentices free rein to move around in isolation to ensure the effectiveness of the treatment. I already determined the punishments, and withdrew the appropriate fines from the identified accounts. Jiraiya will be covering while we're gone. Shocked into silence by the fact that he had more seals on him he didn't ask for, Naruto was left gaping like a fish. Shikamaru wasn't quite so passive. Apprentices? I thought that Shizune was your only apprentice at the moment. Snapping, Tsunade ruffled Naruto's hair. Almost forgot about that. Congratulations, Naruto. You and Hinata are now the newest Chunin of Konoha and apprentices of yours truly. Savoring the silence, Tsunade realized this was probably the last time Naruto was going to be so badly shocked for a while. Shikamaru had an unusually thoughtful look on his face when heading home that night. After some screaming, yelling, and various other expressions of surprise, Naruto was fully convinced that his promotion was real. Apparently, being a Chunin on medical leave had more rights than a genin, especially those without families. Although Shikamaru knew that Hinata was mostly along to screw with the Hyuga elders, he wondered what Tsunade would do if those two actually started to develop feelings for each other. So troublesome. Having been sworn to secrecy for the next day or so, and given special orders while the group was gone, Shikamaru was ready to head for bed for some well-deserved shut-eye. However, it seemed that fate had decided he wasn't done yet. Oi, Shikamaru! Looking up, he rolled his eyes. His father and friends were back from drinking. Squinting, Shikamaru nodded at the trio and headed towards his room. Sleep was the only thing that he really wanted right now. Plus, dealing with those three whining after hearing everything that had happened to Naruto was not on the agenda. Sadly, Shikaka knew him too well for that kind of dodge to work. Grabbing his troublesome son by the shirt, the original Ino-Shikacho combination dragged him into the parlor. Sitting Shikamaru down rather forcefully, Shikaka broke out the shogi board while his friends settled in for the show. Shikaka only started a game like this when in a very bad mood. Shikamaru was not in the mood for this. His father was normally a good opponent in shogi. He hadn't managed a win anyways. However, whenever he got drunk and felt like crap, Shikaka would insist upon a match against his son. Mostly, it was a way to vent without killing someone, and Shikamaru was the only one who would put up with his anger when he was wasted. In return, Shikaka was usually willing to help deflect his wife from tormenting his son for a few days. However, when the rest of the Ino-Shikacho group joined in, they usually were in need of entertainment. That only happened when they all felt horrible about something, and thought that a drunken shogi game would be amusing. The last time this happened was after the Sandame's funeral, so just walking away would not go over too well. Parents were so troublesome. Looking at the board, the Chunin suddenly had an odd feeling. Before his eyes, each of his pieces seemed to take on the visage of one of the new Konoha genin, while his father's took on the look of an older ninja. Blinking, Shikamaru couldn't drive the image from his mind, so he didn't bother. It might have been a little disconcerting, but the image felt strangely appropriate for the moment. This game was going to be played out in real life, sooner or later, with the way things were going. He might as well prepare for the battle to come. Moving a faceless village Chunin, Shikaka started to talk, slurring his words only slightly. I wanted to congratulate you on your successful mission. You managed to complete the objective, and bring your friends home. It's a good start to your career. Thinking, Shikamaru moved a pawn that looked a bit like Konohamaru, troublesome. I just hope that I am able to keep my friends from getting so badly hurt next time. If it wasn't for Tsunade-sama, I don't want to think of what would have happened to Chuji or Niji. Noting the flinching Akimichi, Shikamaru almost felt badly about the dig, almost being the key word. Taking a moment, the red-faced Naro shifted a knight that looked oddly like Kakashi-sensei. Getting hurt is a part of the job. The important thing was that your leadership brought them the greatest chance of victory possible with the information available. Remember this in the future, and the missions will seem easier, even as the danger increases. Letting out a small sigh of irritation, Shikamaru moved an angry Sakura to block the advancement. For some reason, the patterns he would normally rely upon were not coming. Hundreds of mathematical strategies formed around normal shogi pieces. But he just couldn't manage to dehumanize his troops tonight. However, Shikamaru couldn't help but feel that his campaign was still equal. It was almost as if this was not a battle of pieces or tactics, but of will. Although the elder Nara seemed to be immune to the tension in his son's shoulders, or the thoughts running through his head, this was simply a game of shogi to help him focus a bit, after Inoichi was censured by the Hokage, an issue that none of them knew how to deal with yet. Noticing the twitching that was controlling Inoichi's arm, Shikamaru raised an eye. The Yamanaka patriarch was normally better than that. Countering Inuzuka-san with a stoic Shino, Shikamaru glanced at the old family friend. "What's wrong, Yamanaka-san? You seem tense for some reason. Is Ino giving you crap again or something?" Flinching at the tone, Inoichi met the young man's eyes with some difficulty. "Just some clan business. One of our family members broke some important laws, and we have to decide on how to punish him. We've actually been debating the issue most of the evening." Noting the reddened faces and alcohol fumes wafting in the breeze, Shikamaru translated that as, "Got drunk off our asses trying to figure out how much this was going to hurt their image or honor." Shifting a glaring Niji in front of Hayashi, Shikamaru suddenly got a cold feeling in the pit of his stomach. The timing was just too neat for the issue to be a coincidence. But the question was, how to make sure of their guilt. Looking over the trio, he decided some dirty pool was in order. You know? I really wouldn't want to be the Uchiha right now. Cracking his neck, Shikaku smirked at the flow of gameplay. Shikamaru must not be on the ball tonight. Idly moving a grinning Tsum to block the chip-munching Chuji, he returned easily. "Oh, and why would that be, Smiling, Tsum was countered by an enraged Akamaru. "Well, the Hokage likes Naruto a lot, and out of everyone on the team he was injured the worst. I mean, they were talking of injuries that could take months to heal. For someone like Naruto, that has to be pretty severe." The Ino Shikacho team was legendary in their abilities and precision. The Yamanaka flair, the Naro brilliance, and the Akimichi strength were fearsome both on and off the battlefield. Yet that one little statement shook them more than the sound invasion. Seeing the doubt and fear on their faces, Shikamaru gave a smirk worthy of his favorite blonde. They had answered a number of questions that hadn't been asked, and helped to confirm a troublesome decision. Old people were such useful teachers. Shifting the last piece, a knight with oddly gravity-defying hair, against a wrinkled old queen, he sighed. "I concede." Standing, Shikamaru prepared for the future, confident in his chances for the first time in hours. As his son left without a word, Shikaku was forced to stare speechless at the board. The strategy was lacking, the methods were limited, and the defense was splintered. However, while Shikamaru's board screamed weakness, the chaos of the plays had put the seemingly weaker pieces in a perfect position to assassinate the stronger ones. Suddenly, as he sat there, reviewing the last few moves, the nature of their epic struggle became somewhat clearer to his buzzing mind. This game had a purpose, one that he had missed in his state of inebriation. Simply put, it said, "I concede for now." As stated previously, Yamanaka Inoichi was not stupid. That included times where he was drunk. Turning white as a sheet, he looked over his oldest friends, changing history with two little words: "He knows." The finality of that statement shook all three of them to their cores. Chusa looked down in shame, Inoichi blushed in embarrassment, and Shikaku stared at the game, willing it to change in some way. Naro Shikamaru had somehow discovered their involvement with making Naruto's life that much more unpleasant. It wasn't really guaranteed that he knew the ultimate secret, but one thing was clear. He was taking Naruto's side over theirs. Covering his face, Shikaku was surprised by the moisture there. Children, they can be so troublesome. Izumo and Kotetsu leaned back, watching the early morning traffic with ease. Honestly, gate guard duty was so relaxing that it was surprising that more people didn't request it. You check for a few henges, look over passports, and direct customers towards the Hokage Tower, simplest C rank in the village. Plus, with the stories you could collect about the weirdos hanging around, getting free drinks was sickeningly easy, especially when the events of the day became known to the general population. Looking up, the two ninja were shocked by the appearance of a departing group, containing their boss, the fifth Hokage. They'd know that bust anywhere. Eyes narrowing, Izumo moved to block the departing travelers. Something fishy was going on here. "Stop. State your business and intentions." Looking down her nose at the Chunin, the blonde leader called a halt to the group. Hinata tried to look unassuming while Shizune shifted a sleeping Naruto in her arms. Each was clearly weighed down with backpacks bursting with sealing scrolls. All in all, they painted a very suspicious picture. Gulping, Izumo refused to back down. If these ninja were impersonating the Hokage and her apprentice, and he let them leave unchallenged, it would be prison guard duty for the next 3 months. Those freaking Baka brothers would either squash him, or drive him insane within that kind of time span. Trying to sound authoritative, The nervous Chunin plastered a smile on his face. Papers and reason for leaving? Rolling her eyes, Tsunade gripped the Chunin by the neck. I don't have time for this, Izumo. We are leaving for the land of waves for a period of extended medical treatment. Any delays could significantly hinder our efforts, so you might want to get out of the way. Rushing to his friend's defense, Kotetsu tried to defuse the situation before he needed a new drinking buddy. So sorry, Hokage-sama, but we are simply doing our jobs. Any mission below S rank has to be verified if the departure is made through the main gate. We're simply following safety protocols, so if you could provide the needed paperwork for authorization? Dropping the gasping Izumo, Tsunade sighed. She really couldn't get angry at two honest working ninja. That sort of dedication was commendable, but the sooner they left Konoha the better. However, if she wanted to make a statement before leaving, this was as good a place to start as any. Blinking at a sudden idea, the Hokage smirked, causing the two Chunin to shiver in fear. That sort of look was never good when shown by a strong kunoichi. Enko was proof enough of that. Taking a single finger, Tsunade tapped the ground in front of the group with the slightest of pressure. The resulting 10-foot-deep crater was almost magical in its sudden appearance, and the shockwave was just plain impressive. Izumo and Kotetsu could attest to that, finding themselves knocked off their feet with the carefully directed force. Looking at the two shocked ninja, Tsunade quirked an eyebrow. Do you still doubt my identity? Rapidly shaking their heads, the Izumo gulped while Kotetsu sweated. That could have been their heads, or worse. Are you going to continue to stop us? Stuttering out a negative, it took all of the two guards' willpower not to grab each other in fear. Smiling lightly at the change of attitude, Tsunade nodded, gesturing for the rest of the group to follow her. Not making a sound, they were out of sight within minutes. Wiping his face, Izumo looked over at his oldest friend, as he tried to get his feet working again. Kotetsu? Quirking his eyebrow, Kotetsu nodded, trying to get his shivering under control after getting vertical. Yeah, Izumo? Collapsing behind the sentry post, the Chunin smirked. I am so calling the first round we get for this story. That statement led to an argument for the remainder of the morning. Hamura and Koharu walked down the path to the tower, heads held high and proud. They had protected the village of Konoha for so long that it felt like a part of them, and today they would finally establish that claim. Once Tsunade was forced to banish Uzumaki, other key agendas could be brought forth for approval or disapproval. However, with the threat of Uzumaki's future constantly in the balance, advice would become dictation, and there was nothing that the blonde bimbo could do about it. Soon, Konoha would grow stronger than at any point in history, and the threat of Uchiha Itachi would be a thing of the past. Their pleasant daydreams were shattered by the cry of a messenger hawk. Looking at each other in worry, the advisors' council increased their speed to maximum. Tsunade was calling for a full muster of the Jonin, Anbu and Chunin commanders. That was usually only done in time of war. What could have possibly happened in the 2 days they had left her to stew in her issues? Rushing to the Hokage's office, the advisors headed to the front, unmindful of the rapidly assembling ninja forces filling the room. Tsunade. What is the meaning of this? Sitting behind the desk and flanked by a stony-faced Jiraiya, Tsunade didn't even deem them important enough to look at. Hamura, Koharu, your questions will be answered in due time. Now wait with the others. Ready to put this child in her place, Koharu was restrained by the wary Hamura. Hold on, Koharu. Such a display would undermine our authority within the ninja ranks. Such discussions are best suited to a private forum. Seeing the frowns from younger generation at their tone, the old woman held her peace. However, that did not mean she would forget this outrage. Treating the advisors' council like simple, average ninja, it was appalling. Within about 20 minutes, all of the on-duty ninja of significant rank within the village were assembled. They would, in turn, provide information to their subordinates and key elements of the Konoha civilian population. The news provided here would soon spread among the entirety of village within hours. Smirking at the thought, Tsunade wondered how many heart attacks would be generated by her latest orders. Thank you for coming here. I wish to take this opportunity to share some recent decisions and declarations that will significantly impact Konoha in the months to come. Would you, Jonin Shiraniganma, please come here? The recently healed ninja, Samban in his mouth, came to the front before his Hokage. Taking a series of orders, she held them up for the Jonin to look at. Can you verify that these are sealed, and are thus legal orders of the Hokage? Glancing at the papers, Genma felt the metal twig fall from his lips in shock. All he could do was nod weakly. Having reviewed these orders, and determined them as genuine, will you please present a summary of them to the assembled forces? Looking at the curious ninja, the pissed-off counselors, and the widening smirk on the blonde leader's face, Genma suddenly wished he was back in the hospital. Clearing his throat, Ginma faced the horde as best as he could. Well, you seem to have stripped the Uchiha of all of his power and position, withdrawn a large sum of money from the bank in retaliation to crimes committed, and taken 2 additional apprentices, after promoting them to Chunin on your authority. This news caused a rapid number of questions to fly between the gathered forces. The decommissioning of the Uchiha was not well received. He had become their symbol for the future of the clan within Konoha. The loss of that support was very cruelly felt. However, fines significant enough to warrant a Hokage authorization must have resulted from crimes against the country itself, another thing to be concerned about, especially so soon after the invasion. The apprenticeship notice was a surprise, but not an unwelcome one. At least Konoha would soon have 2 additional medical ninjas of Shizune's level to boast about. Say, where was Shizune anyways? Nodding at the angry mutters, having expected such a response, Tsunade stood. Uchiha Sasuke has been declared a traitor, having conspired with sound forces to defect. He was successfully recaptured by a team led by Nara Shikamaru, aided by the head genin of Suna, and personally subdued by Uzumaki Naruto. Over the course of the mission, the heirs of 3 clans, and 2 Jonin-level ninja were placed in significant danger by his actions. He has been imprisoned, and will remain within a holding cell for the remainder of his life. What that means for the revival of the Sharingan will be discussed with the appropriate parties in due time. That caused a stillness to envelop the ninja ranks. No matter what sort of authority the Uchiha clan might have wielded, traitors could never be tolerated. The fact that Sasuke had attempted to work with sound, led by Orochimaru, murderer of the 3rd Hokage, was unforgivable. It was regrettable, but the loss of the Uchiha clan appeared to be complete. Nodding at the response, Tsunade continued once order was restored. Now, as to the issue of those fines. It has come to my attention that several elements within the Konoha ninja forces intentionally acted to subdue and limit the talents of a prospective ninja during their tenure at the academy. Since the subject was still a civilian at the time of the attacks, this is a very serious issue, not even counting the mitigating circumstances surrounding him. Elements of the Yamanaka, Hyuga, Uchiha, and Anbu have been identified as illegally subjecting this child to a series of uncoordinated sealings that nearly destroyed his chances of joining the ninja ranks. While there appear to be more as of yet unidentified assailants, these groups contributed the most severely to his injuries. With this discovery, each identified subject and clan has been appropriately fined and punished to reflect the severity of the crime. That statement froze everyone in their tracks. Intimidation and abuse of the civilian population was very strongly frowned upon in Konoha. Each relied upon the other in order to survive, and as such, respected a boundary to ensure that all did not become forced intimidation. However, for an event to garner the notice of the Hokage's office, the victim must have been very highly placed within their society. Who in the village could possibly justify that kind of attention? Buffing her nails a bit, Tsunade smirked. I'm sure that Naruto will feel privileged by your concern for him. That caused the room to explode again, as a vocal minority started bemoaning the fact that Naruto was awarded any sort of compensation for the crimes against him. Surprisingly, the majority of the ninjas present kept their heads, with a smaller group looking outraged at the information. Recently, Uzumaki had been gaining some admiration and respect, especially after his surprising upset victory against Hyuga Niji, and the rumored victory against the Tsunade Jinchuriki Gaara. Therefore, hearing about a fellow ninja of the leaf being abused in such a fashion set more people's teeth on edge than you might think. Hamura and Koharu were shocked into silence. This might complicate their plans somewhat. Tired of the bickering, Jiraiya stomped forward to regain control. Enough. You will stop this now. The following killing intent managed to capture everyone's attention. Staring the gathered ninjas of Konoha, he proceeded to rip the detractors into little pieces. Do you have any idea how insulting you are being towards my old student? The 4th was a master of seals unlike any before him. The cage of the Kyuubi is perfect as it is designed. There is no way that the fox can escape from its prison. But to be clear about the seriousness of these actions, let me ask you something. I know that some of you fancy yourselves as sealers, so tell me what would happen to a matrix that had several unplanned and unrelated seals subjected to its construction. The scattered, shocked stares were his only response. On average, that sort of question came up in such studies within about a month. The answer was ingrained upon the heart of any ninja who studied seals for more than a cheap way to make exploding tags. Nodding, Jiraiya continued with the traditional response. Adding random seals to an existing matrix can destabilize or even undo its construction. These self-righteous idiots would have brought the Kyuubi down upon our heads if Minato wasn't a fantastic genius. Even if you don't like the kid, you have to admit the intentional damaging of a Jinchuriki seal is a serious offense. We are very lucky that the main seal held throughout all of this tampering. Having undone the illegal additions, I'm sure that you will all be happy to know that the seal is stronger than ever, and reinforced to a greater degree than I ever believed possible. Breathing out sighs of relief, the various students of sealing relaxed, their fears comforted. That sort of elementary mistake should never have been made, no matter how much hate the kid was the focus of. It was just plain unprofessional. Noting that her old teammate had finally run out of steam, Tsunade retook control of the conversation. Yes, thank you, Jiraiya. Unfortunately, due to the nature of these crimes and injuries, Naruto will need extensive rehabilitation in isolation to facilitate his recovery. Oh, on that note, Genma, if you would be so kind as to verify this last order? Looking at the piece of paper as if it were a python, he glanced over the document. Then, believing that his eyes must be going, he reviewed it again. Looking at the Hokage in horror, Genma couldn't even mumble more than a small affirmative. Enjoying the gobsmacked expression, Tsunade stood to finalize her address. Well then, I guess it is official. During the next few months, myself and my 3 apprentices will be moving into seclusion to check upon and redevelop the mental, physical and spiritual well-being of Chunin Uzumaki Naruto. Upon my authority, Jiraiya will be temporary Rokudan with limited personal power for 6 months. If the treatment takes longer, he will assume the position with all of the attached privileges and powers therein. Shouts of outrage and shock filled the office, headed by the furious advisors' council. That little twit had significantly damaged all of their goals. She could not get away with this. Pushing his glasses back in irritation, Hamura growled, "You do not have the right to do this, Tsunade. We gave you the options available, and you violated those terms. Uzumaki Naruto will be removed permanently for this." Noting the shock and irritation of various factions, Tsunade stuck her tongue out at the 2 old bats. "I am the Hokage, and you 2 are simply jonin, thus under my command. You can threaten, bluster, advise and demand all you bloody want, but no one determines what happens to the ninja under my command besides me. Jiraiya is my proxy, while I go to fix the massive issues you have generated for a hero of this village, as declared by the 4th Hokage." Huffing in anger, Koharu snapped, "No one child is worth this much attention, especially a clanless cretin like Uzumaki. While I agree some punishment is merited, this sort of misappropriation of resources is dangerously close to abuse of power. The strongest ninja of the village are here before you. Do you honestly think that you can stop them all from subduing you before leaving with that thing?" Noting the faces of those few willing to follow that illegal action, Tsunade nodded to Jiraiya. Dealing with those factions would be his responsibility while she was gone. "First of all, Koharu, you just admitted to a level of treason right there. Not only are you contradicting the Hokage, but you are seeking to injure and assassinate a ninja under my command without jurisdiction. Even if you could keep me here, you would try to order my troops against me? Remember your place. As to preventing me from leaving." Smirking at the disgruntled expression, Tsunade brought her hands to form a seal. "What makes you think that I am still here?" With a poof of smoke, Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, disappeared from Konoha for a very long time. Tsunade grinned as the memories of the dispersed shadow clone returned to her. The look on the faces of Hamura and Koharu were priceless. Running through the trees, Tsunade led her apprentices down a familiar path, one taken by several proud and loyal genin of the leaf-scant days before. Tsunade normally would be heading towards their first stop in the rehabilitation, but Naruto's comment from the night before had caught her attention. Reviewing the fight with an enthusiastic Lee, and later Gaara, she had come to the conclusion that Orochimaru somehow brainwashed the last Kagaya of Mist. Since the medics and Kakashi hadn't mentioned a single thing about this bone guy on their way back, there was a fairly good shot that he was still out there to be collected. Coming out into a clearing, Tsunade whistled at the sight. That was a lot of very big bones. It was like a combination of forest and gaping maw, dozens of white spears spread out across the plains, angrily attacking the sky. However, that really wasn't what she was interested in. Holy, what the heck happened to him? He looks like a dinosaur. Smiling at the sight of a slightly worn-out corpse, Tsunade grabbed a scroll. "Well, Naruto, it looks like he had a second-stage curse seal form like you said Sasuke developed. The fact that he is still in this state is actually very useful to us." Turning from the sight, Hinata tried to remain strong. This was one of the first times that she had seen a dead enemy up close and personal. However, if she was going to help Naruto deal with enemies such as S-class missing ninja, such things would probably become more common than she liked. Shizune placed Naruto on the ground, handing him Tantan for the moment. Stretching after the invigorating run, she headed over to help her mistress. "So, what do you think he can tell us?" Winding up, Tsunade punched the base of the bone pillar. "The fact that he remained in cursed form after death is interesting. All of the other retrieved corpses reverted to normal after passing. Something about his released Kekkai Genkai appears to have frozen him in this state, which will make studying the curse seal and Kagaya abilities more effective." Turning green at the scientific talk for slicing someone up and playing with his innards, Naruto gave Tantan a particularly hard pat. "Is that really necessary, Bachan? I mean, he's dead. He can't hurt anyone anymore, right?" Sighing at her new apprentice's naivety, Tsunade prepared a sealing scroll to preserve the body until they could set up base somewhere. Actually, given Orochimaru's love of the bloody curse seal, studying him could lead to hurting the snake if nothing else. Don't worry about it, Naruto, you two won't have to help with this sort of thing yet. Gulping, Hinata looked at her new master. Why yet, Tsunade-sama? Shizune hummed as she traced preservation seals all over the corpse. As distasteful as it might seem, Hinata-chan, studying dead enemy ninja is often done by medic nin to learn anatomy and uncover secret techniques left in the body. It's one of the reasons that hunter nin are so important. If an enemy managed to learn Konoha secrets from our dead or missing nins, we'd have to develop new and complicated defenses against our own methods. However, all the hidden villages do it to some degree. The Sharingan just made us a little lazy. Kumo is actually among the strongest in the field. Trailing off at the sudden dark vibe, Shizune winced at the gloom surrounding her two junior apprentices. She obviously needed to choose her words with more care with these two. Finishing the sealing of not only the body, but several samples of bone, Tsunade frowned at the atmosphere. That's enough of that, now. We have to make tracks if we're going to make it to our first stop within the next 3 days. Shaking off the depression, both Chunin nodded firmly. Now was not the time to worry about such things. They had a goal, and a responsibility. Moping could wait until later. Pausing, Tsunade sighed. Oh, and before I forget, I need you heights. The fewer people who notice the symbol of the leaf, the longer our cover will last. Any? Blinking, Hinata handed over her badge with minimal complaint. Naruto, on the other hand, looked like someone had kicked his puppy hard. You'd better hold on to that, Bachan. Iruka-sensei gave it to me, and I earned it with blood and tears. Smiling at the gusto that had been lacking recently from the blonde, Tsunade carefully sealed the important symbol in front of the fretting Naruto. There, all done. Let's head out then. We still have a lot of ground to cover. Taking her turn in carrying Naruto, and ignoring the resulting blush he sported at the action, Tsunade hopped through the trees, each apprentice following easily at their current pace. I wonder what Jiraiya is doing to those idiots now. Upon the dispersal of smoke, the advisor's council was quick to act. Turning to the ANBU captains, Hamura barked, start tracing the paths of departure, starting from Uzumaki's hospital room. She couldn't have gotten too far without anyone noticing. Glaring at the assembled jonin, Koharu gritted out, start interviewing the other rookie genin teams. Perhaps we can determine if Uzumaki leaked out information through conversations or odd comments. We must stop Tsunade before she brings shame down upon Konoha. Noting the tensing of muscles, both began preparing mentally for the needed damage control. Summoning jutsu. Only to be wrapped in giant toad tongues. Sitting behind the desk of the Hokage, Jiraiya released a fraction of his killing intent. Everyone pretty much stopped breathing at that point. Cracking his knuckles for emphasis, Jiraiya frowned. I believe that you are going to disregard those orders. They are, after all, without authorization. Shrugging off the oppressive feeling of doom, Koharu felt like screaming. It was only the years of experience and focus that kept her response somewhat civil. Jiraiya. What the hell do you think you are doing? We cannot allow Tsunade to abandon Konoha in its hour of need. Release us at once. Well, more or less civil, all things considered. Leaning back in the nice, comfy chair, the toad sage quirked an eyebrow. Abandoned? So evaluating the physical, mental and spiritual damage that a secondary, faulty seal array accomplished when applied to Konoha's Jinchuriki is somehow abandoning her role in Konoha? To protect her ninja from all enemies, including internal ones? I think that you need a checkup when she gets back. Bristling at the dig being made about them, it was all the two elders could do not to try to kill Jiraiya right then and there. Slamming a fist down upon the desk for emphasis, Jiraiya addressed the crowd, mindful that most hadn't moved since his demonstration of power. Listen up, maggots. Tsunade has left me as her proxy, so my word is currently her word. As authenticated by a jonin of good standing within Konoha, her orders stand. INBU and Chunin commanders are hereby ordered to disseminate the necessary facts to the various factions within Konoha. Jonin with genin and junior Chunin are to provide the necessary details to their subordinates. Any remaining ninja who is also a head of their respective clan is to remain, the rest are dismissed. The vast majority of the ninja forces couldn't leave fast enough. Nodding to the remaining jonin and special jonin who helped to lead the major ninja clans, Jiraiya stood resolute before dispersing his toads to release the elders from 5 feet in the air. No problem for an active ninja. Repositioning themselves as quickly as possible, Hamura and Koharu tried to forget the sensation of falling on their backsides. For a geriatric couple of retirees? Not so much. Now for those of you who remain, one of the last decrees that Tsunade issued needs to be addressed. Grunting, Tsum cocked her head. What the hell could match the rest of those freaking orders? Shibi patted his old friend on the shoulder. Relaxed Tsum. Jiraiya is not so foolish as to aggravate the clan heads further. Although, I think that a discussion with Tsunade is in order upon her return. Clearing his throat, Jiraiya hoped the shock would buy him some more time. He was just lucky that Tsunade's idea was such an attractive bone. It actually has to do with the Uchiha clan Kekkai Genkai. That brought everyone's focus directly upon his head. Snorting in irritation, Hayashi stared Jiraiya down coolly. What are you speaking of? The last Uchiha has already been imprisoned for life. A resurrection of the Sharingan is impossible now. Shaking his head, Jiraiya sighed. Before leaving, Tsunade recognized the necessity of the Sharingan for our future forces. Therefore, she has authorized the extraction of genetic samples for a set number of pregnancies. This news was almost as shocking as Tsunade leaving in the first place. Ordering the forced dissemination of genetic material from a Kekkai Genkai was nearly taboo within Konoha. In a village that honored such clans so religiously, such an order was the equivalent of raping a corpse. To ensure the sanctity of their various abilities, ninja bodies with Kekkai Genkai were always burned within hours of their recovery or death before entombment. This was actually one of the major reasons that a dozen Kakashis hadn't sprung up after the Uchiha massacre, despite what some had suggested. Seeing the looks of shock turning to outrage, the old pervert smirked. Uchiha Sasuke was responsible for the continuation of his Kekkai Genkai, but through his own acts has become unsuitable for the job. Since the Sharingan was one of the major reasons that the kid got whatever he wanted for the last few years, some compensation seems to be in order. The ninja clans are ordered to evaluate any possible candidates within their households for impregnation after compatibility issues are examined. Since we are looking to recoup our losses within the next few years, let's start with subjects around 17 to 24. In addition, every single, fertile and unattached kunoichi of the appropriate age group will be evaluated as backups in case insufficient numbers can be drawn from the clans. Turning to the sputtering elders, he continued with barely a pause. Your job is to find a selection of civilian candidates who are well placed enough to raise the kids in an appropriate fashion. We need a plan in place in case the Uchiha bloodline is recessive, and is thus dominated by the stronger traits of another established ninja clan. Oh, and if it is unclear to anyone, this is all being done with a test tube. That kid is getting no sex, or any form of visitation for the rest of his life. Tsunade was fairly strict about that. Restraining her outrage at the horrific treatment, Koharu snarled, this isn't over, Jiraiya. We'll find those candidates, but mark my words, there will be consequences for these actions. When certain parties hear about this, you will beg for mercy. Smile turning grim, Jiraiya looked her straight in the eye. You'd better believe it, you old geezer. In fact, I have already planned to deal with his concerns as we speak. Sarutobi Asuma had seen and done many things within his life, but the times in the capital were among his brightest memories. While there, he had escaped the intricate power plays of his youth and felt like he was actually accomplishing something concrete. He would protect the Fire Daimyo and ensure the peace of the Fire Country, as a member of the 12 elite guardians. It seemed so simple back then, and that innocence was one of the recollections that kept him sane. However, he did not rise to Jonin rank with just his good looks. Connections were everything at the higher levels of politics, and Jiraiya was smart enough to capitalize upon that. Thus, it was after a mere 2-hour waiting period that Asuma was shown into the daimyo's personal reception area to present Tsunade's final orders. Kneeling a mere 5 tatami lengths from the raised dais, a sign of personal trust and honor, Asuma watched the face of his old commander. Although his lined face gave nothing away, the daimyo's eyes betrayed irritation, a sign or great anger for one such as him. I am not pleased with this turn of events, Asuma-kun. Keeping his eyes lowered, the Jonin had to fight the urge to scratch his head in embarrassment. I apologize, Daimyo-sama, but Tsunade-sama is strong in her convictions. She saw the insinuations of the advisor's council as a threat to her power, and acted accordingly. Glancing over the reports, justifications and arguments attached to the copies of Tsunade's decrees, it was all the aged statesman could do not to snort in irritation. These excuses were cover for her real agenda, a temper tantrum because someone had given her advice she did not like. As admirable as I find her compassion, such actions on the behalf of one Konoha genin, no matter what his circumstances, does appear excessive. Although, I have to admit that the secondary seals concern me somewhat. That sort of abuse can lead to copycats if not carefully monitored or contained. Thinking quickly, Asuma jumped upon this slight opening. What he was about to do was outside his primary orders, but somehow, he didn't think that Jiraiya would mind that much. While I assure you that Konoha is in capable hands with Jiraiya as proxy, the situation was aggravated because key elements within the Konoha hierarchy were granted extraordinary powers above their station. If that endorsement was limited or removed, I am sure that the situation could be brought under control in an expedited fashion. This was a direct challenge, one that the daimyo couldn't miss. By removing his protection from the advisors' council and Danzu, and the situation could be fixed easily. Smiling lightly at the simple yet effective tactic, the leader of the Fire Country couldn't help but sigh. While I lack the authority to directly alter or impede orders made by the Hokage within the Konoha military structure, I believe that those endorsements should remain in place for the moment. There is much more that you have yet to learn, Asuma-kun. Standing, the daimyo turned towards the wall, where a picture of the elemental countries was placed. Staring at the borders that could shift daily, and alliances that had often changed hourly in the past, the daimyo spoke as the old man he felt like. I am in a somewhat difficult situation here, Asuma-kun. While I admired the fire and brilliance of your father, elements of the government have called his competence into question. Given that the recent action of Sound and Suna was driven by Orochimaru, one of the infamous Sannin and students of the Sandaime, there is much apathy towards the other holders of the title. I do not believe that Tsunade or Jiraiya have as many friends in high places as they might think. Fighting to keep the frustration out of his voice, Asuma tried to reason with the leader, but Daimyo-sama. They are the strongest of our village. With their help Konoha will grow and prosper. Smiling lightly, the daimyo turned to face his old subordinate once again. How, may I ask, is drinking across the country and writing pornography a way of strengthening the village? An uncomfortable stretch between the two for minutes after that declaration. The smoking jonin could not find an answer for that. Breaking the stalemate, the daimyo tried to reason with his old friend. The sooner someone in power realized this, the better off everyone would be in the end. The Hokage must be strong in both reputation and willpower. However, the position is mostly a young man's sport. The Sandaime was negligent in his failure to appoint a successor, and that has led to the current problem. Tsunade is acceptable as a holder of the title, however many do not trust her with the power of the position. Reseating himself, the daimyo smirked. Thus a compromise has been reached that everyone can agree to. By leaving those elements with my support in place to balance the Hokage influence for the current generation, to ensure Konoha's survival until the next generation takes root. Admittedly, their agenda against the poor boy is somewhat disturbing, but as you well know, sacrifices must sometimes be made. Stiffening at the knowledge revealed to him that fateful night 2 days ago, Asuma had to fight the urge to yell in anger. He might not have treated the kid badly or anything, but the insult against the fourth's only son now stung badly. However, such knowledge shouldn't be bandied about with reckless abandon. Everything had its time and place. Daimyo-sama, I beg you to reconsider. Attacking Uzumaki Naruto will not gain the country anything. He is but an innocent child who acts as our protector from great evil and wrath. Staring at the young man who he trusted with his life, the leader of the country shook his head sadly. Yet to protect the millions of innocents from the threat of Akatsuki and Orochimaru, the loss of one is an unpleasant yet necessary reality. I am sorry, Asuma-kun, but Jiraiya will be dealing with the elders for some time. Until a strong and capable Hokage comes to power, his influence must be checked. Otherwise, I will be dealing with anarchy within the month. Please give my regards to your leader. Bowing low, the young jonin cringed on the inside. He was never going to hear the end of this when he got back. They had been traveling for hours, and as the sun began its descent, Hinata was feeling winded. Being Inuzuka Kiba's teammate, she was used to constant and hyperactivity. But teammate had never traveled for more than 3 hours without a break, and Tsunade had been pushing them full throttle for nearly 5. Even with most of their camping supplies sealed by Jiraiya, the constant use of chakra and physical exertion was wearing her down. While no one else seemed tired, although since Naruto was being carried, he didn't really count, and she hated being seen as weak. If Hinata didn't get a chance to rest soon, she'd fall right from the trees. Clearing her throat, the shy kunoichi was about to ask when they would be stopping, when Tsunade and Shizune seemed to stumble mid-step. Since this occurred while they were leaping through the branches, it was almost a disaster. The young brunette was able to catch herself and taunted at the last minute, holding her head in pain. Tsunade, however, grabbed a branch on her way to the forest floor, incidentally squeezing Naruto in a rather uncomfortable position, one that Jiraiya would have given his fortune for to trade places with the hyperactive blonde. Coming to a stop, Hinata felt mortified. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to distract you. Is everybody alright? Dropping to the ground, Tsunade carefully dislodged Naruto's skull, noting the dazed expression in concern. Don't worry about it, Hinata. We just got a little backlash from that jutsu from earlier, and it caught us off guard. It's about time to rest for the night anyways. Reaching into her medical pack for some aspirin, Shizune smiled. If you could find firewood, Hinata-chan, we can get started on setting up camp. We've made good time, and probably should confer a bit before continuing. Nodding, Hinata quickly activated her dijitsu, and prepared to track the needed dry twigs and sticks. The only person better than her at finding fire-starting materials on Team 8 was Shino, and that was because he could talk to termites. Reassured that Naruto was alright, Tsunade left him to confer with Shizune. She had another evil plan to concoct. Although carrying the kid like a sack of rice wasn't so bad yet, they had a lot of parties who were interested in the boy. Not to mention, it was clear that his invalid status was wearing Naruto down badly. There had hardly been a peep or whisper from him during the entire trip. Naruto was used to leading and doing, so relying on others this much must have been excruciating. Therefore, the sooner that Naruto could be made independently mobile the better for everyone involved. A normal patient with comparable trauma would take months to recover. However, Naruto did not have months, and they couldn't watch over him 24/7. So, she would have to rely upon his absurd regenerative abilities, insane natural muscle memory, and sheer inhuman stubbornness to accelerate the process. It might be a little degrading, but all in all, who was around to complain? Besides, the look on his face would be priceless. Looking at the determined Hinata, Tsunade made a point to remember to have Shizune work with the girl on chakra control and dodging exercises. Starting slow was always the best when dealing with nervous students. Why, her first apprentice had been so scared by the great and powerful Tsunade-sama when she started training, that fainting spells were not uncommon. Those two would work well together to get Hinata up to speed while she treated Naruto. Plus, if the girl's scores were any indication, she would make a good tutor, probably the best place for her until all of that stuttering and blushing died down a bit. Young puppy love was so cute. Tapping the ground to make a fire pit, Tsunade began to mentally review the supplies in their packs, as well as the training methods to be used over the next few months. If Naruto was going to survive, she would do her damn best to make sure that was possible. The training scrolls from the Hokage vault would accomplish most of that, but he would need some guidance in order to shine. Hinata was honestly a nice surprise, and if she showed some backbone the little Hyuga would become quite the kunoichi. A little confidence, some ninjutsu variety, and herbal lore, and she would go far. How far was up to her, but that was a bridge to cross when they got to it. Blinking, she turned around. With all of the preparations to make, Tsunade had almost forgotten. Oh, by the way, Naruto, Tenzuna says hi. That spectacle was outrageous. Hamura and Danzu were quiet as Kohara vented in their secret conference room, deep within the bowels of Konoha. This area had been carefully constructed with the route in mind, and most of the ninja population was unaware of its existence. Access was through invitation only, and with their recently solidified alliance, the Advisors' Council had gladly joined Danzu here to plot. It was secure from Jiraiya's agents, and there were no young impressionable ninja ranks to maintain their facade for. Everyone here had known one another for too long for that. Shaking in rage, the ancient, by ninja standards, Kunoichi continued to fume. I cannot believe the level of arrogance that little brat has shown, abandoning Konoha using legal loopholes when the village is in such desperate need of her protection. Then, she left Jiraiya in charge. With no warning or notice, she leaves to go traipsing off to God knows where. Rubbing his eyes in irritation, Hamura shook his head in agreement. While I can admire her tactics and drive, this is a disaster waiting to happen. When word gets out that the Hokage is running around without any guards or backup, IWA will begin a manhunt of epic proportions. When it becomes known that an unsealed Hyuga is wandering around the elemental nations with such a meager support network, Kuma will start sending hordes of missing neens to retrieve the Byakugan. Who knows what the factions in Kiri will do once they see that much potential out there ripe for the taking. Tsunade must be returned before a major confrontation occurs. Humming slightly, Danzu couldn't help but allow a grin to form. However, despite this setback, we have gained more than it appears. Turning towards the old cripple, their disbelief was tangible. What are you talking about, Danzu? What have we gained from this disaster, besides humiliation and an increased danger level for Konoha? Tapping his cane, a nervous gesture that only happened when he was particularly agitated, it was all Danzu could do not to laugh. The issue of the limiting seals opens entirely new avenues of opportunity to examine. After reviewing this matrix, it is clear to see that Uzumaki will become a warrior of unmatched potential. The only reason we did not wish to use him as a weapon was concern over his real abilities, concerns that will no longer apply once he is reclaimed. If we allow Tsunade to get him patched up, we will have a resource of exceptional strength to use against Itachi and Orochimaru. All we have to do is bring him under our control, and he might even become a potential puppet Hokage in the future. Although Kohara looked like she had swallowed a lemon, neither could argue with the statement. The depth of limitation that Uzumaki had fought under was a little nerve-wracking, all things considered. If he was able to manage a performance of mid-level Chunin while so incapacitated, what could he do with his full potential? He was young, unrefined, and surprisingly inspiring, an excellent puppet to control the next generation. That is, if they could gain control of him. Practically rubbing his hands together in glee, Danzu felt alive for the first time in years. Not only that, while the prestige of the Uchiha clan has taken a major hit, many of the civilian population will still idolize the power that the Sharingan possesses. By using that as bait, you can influence the key members of the civilian population with actual power, shoring up support and control of the village. Looking like the bandaged man was an idiot, Hamura snapped. Of course we realize that, Danzu. The potential gains from winnowing key applicants for the revitalization of the Uchiha clan were obvious. However, no matter how much potential Uzumaki might have or what concessions we might be able to gain from the civilian population, that doesn't change the fact that Tsunade is gone. Without her, we are in a significantly weakened position. Waving of the concerns with his cane, Danzu sighed. As irritating as it might sound, with Jiraiya as the Hokage's proxy, most foreign powers will hesitate to attack us. They will not see a divided village. They'll see one of the Sannin ready to defend. In fact, this proxy issue makes things a little easier for us, since Jiraiya will not be able to speak with his own voice. That will weaken his position within the village enough for us to gain some significant control. In fact, if we are careful, we might even capture some samples of the Uchiha Kekkai Genkai for personal, independent use. Snorting at the old ally's obsession with breeding programs, Koharu glared. We will not be able to do much until the safety and security protocols are established. Jiraiya will be careful in case Kabuto or another sound spy attempts to infiltrate again. While it might be possible, we cannot rely upon it as fact just yet. Weary of all the harping, Danzu stood. I think that we have covered everything that can be discussed this evening. None of us are quite as spry as we used to be. I will send a team to the capital to appraise the daimyo of the situation, and another to track Tsunade. Let us retire for the evening to discuss the tactics concerning the issue tomorrow. Nodding in agreement, the advisors' council stood to be escorted from the barracks. They might be allies, but Danzu was never foolish enough to share everything with anybody. It was honestly one of the things that they admired about him. Only the cautious survive in the world of ninja after all. Toads might not be bloodhounds, but they can follow pheromones just as well as the next animal. Kosuke clung to the ceiling, thankful that the old, but still wily ninja had left without noticing him. He had truly struck pay dirt with this sort of information. If not for the stink of marking slime coming from Hamura and Koharu, he might never have found this path into root space. He still had to map out the pathways, major exits and entrances, and track potential collaborators for the next few days, but if all went well, Jiraiya would be able to pluck root out at the base, removing one of the major threats to Naruto bro. Gamakichi and Gamatatsu wouldn't shut up about the guy, and the boss Gamabunta had acknowledged him as a true henchman of the Toads. Thus, if these guys were going to mess with him, it was up to Kosuke to show them who was boss. Leaping silently to the ground, the purple toad proceeded to sneak into the hidden base. Despite what Tsunade might believe, Naruto wasn't quiet out of frustration. He hadn't been raising a stink because he was the more confused now than at any other point in his life. Ever since he had woken up in the hospital, Naruto had been noticing more and more things seemed different. The stress of Tsunade's news and his recent promotion to Chunin had successfully distracted him for a while. But now that he was spending hours being carried, the normally hyperactive ninja didn't have anything to do except think. What was normally an exercise in pain now came clearly, and without issue. He wasn't sure if that was an improvement, or not. Every touch, sight and smell seemed 100 times stronger. The world was more real than anything else. Normally, unless something was moving or threatening him, Naruto couldn't really be bothered to notice it. However, everything nearby was screaming for his attention, from the sound of Hinata's sandal hitting the ground to the warmth from Tsunade-bachan's hug from earlier. It was almost like the world was missing some color, or outline, and it was suddenly fixed. Naruto was feeling completely overloaded, and didn't know how to deal with the sensation. Another confusing thing was the reaction to all of the physical interaction. First there was Sakura's hug, then Hinata holding his hand, Shizune-chan carrying him to Tsunade-bachan accidentally suffocating him in her chest. All of these events within the last 2 days made up more physical attention and affection than he had received at any point in his entire life. Not sure how to deal with the resulting emotions, years of conditioning from Sakura came to the forefront, as he kept his mouth shut so they wouldn't hit him for being a pervert. But if he couldn't manage a bathroom trip on his own soon, the blonde might just stab himself in the brain to save himself from a heart attack. Oi, Naruto! Stiffening, Naruto turned to the smiling Tsunade, gulping. That sort of tone never meant anything good for him. Yes, Tsunade-bachan? What's up? Smile widening at the nervous ninja, it was all the blonde Hokage could do not to cackle. This was going to be so much fun. Since we've got some downtime, I thought we could do some basic training to get you into a bit of shape. You're physically healed, but you need some time to readjust to your regrown muscles. Perking up, Naruto grinned. This was just the sort of thing to get his mind focused. Training always made everything better. Trying to act cocky, despite his uncoordinated limbs and confused mind, Naruto made a peace sign, bring it, Bachan. Cracking her knuckles, Tsunade crouched down. The point of this exercise is simple. Get to the other side of the clearing and back. I will follow you, and for every time that I think that you are slacking, I will tickle you to tears. Noting the shocked look on the blonde's face, Shizune giggled while holding up a camera. Plus, every time that she catches you, I'm going to take pictures until you escape. Gulping, Naruto was beginning to wish that Erosenin had taken him as an apprentice instead. Ready? Start. What is the red chakra? Waiting for Kurenai-sensei to pick her up, Sakura couldn't stop thinking about the confrontation with Sasuke yesterday. The meeting had stirred up so many emotions and issues that it was all she could do to wake up this morning. Questions about her devotion to Sasuke, her complex feelings of love and jealousy when dealing with him consumed Sakura's mind. The raw anger that being dismissed like that sparked deep within her soul, to the loss of confidence that his comments generated. All of these facts ran around her brain until practically early morning. If it wasn't for some very strong tea, Sakura would probably still be passed out, or a zombie. Yet after all of that thinking, the one question that came to mind was, ironically, from Sasuke-kun's own mouth about Naruto. They had been teammates for months, and thinking back, Sakura had begun to notice certain things that didn't add up. Moments of great danger where Naruto began to show anger or aggressive behavior, wounds that healed within minutes that should have taken days, eyes that slit or shifted color. These clues churned through Sakura's mind, trying to find a pattern. It made no sense that the idiot, who she had begun to like a bit as a friend, could have such a huge secret. As far as she knew, since being on Team 7 she was the closest to Naruto that anyone ever had been before. When all of the parents told their children to stay away. Frowning, Sakura tried to remember why she had been told to stay away from Naruto for so many years. Thinking about it, no reason was ever given or suggested, just the simple fact that Naruto was trouble. As funny as some of his pranks were throughout the academy, it only encouraged his isolation. But the warning started years before the pranks, almost as soon as she had seen him on the street. Why tell everybody to stay away from a little kid like that? It was just so confusing. Then there were the suppression seals Tsunade-sama had talked about. What could people be scared by enough to hurt a little kid like that? Some paint bombs didn't equate mental and physical trauma of that level. She might have started seeing Naruto as a friend, but hearing something like that made her wonder who Uzumaki Naruto really was. At least the ban on talking with her peers was over, so she could pick Ino's brain for ideas. Despite her flighty appearance,